Welcome to today's policy session of the Phoenix City Council. Thank you for joining us for a virtual meeting. We will begin with a call for, we will begin with a roll call so that everyone who is online can check in. Will the clerk or staff please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia?
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor? Councilwoman Stark?
Here.
Councilman Waring?
Here.
Councilwoman Williams? Vice Mayor Guardado?
Here.
Mayor Gallego?
Here. Wonderful, thank you. Vice Mayor, do we have a call for an executive session for Monday?
Yes, Mayor. In accordance with a properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute Section 38 through 431.03A, meet an executive session on Monday, April 6, 2020 at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington Street, Phoenix, Arizona. In addition, I move to change the start time of the City Council policy session, currently scheduled for 1 p.m. Monday, April 6, 2020 to 2 p.m. Monday, April 6, 2020.
Second.
Aye. Your sound's off, Mayor.
Why have we not had the mayor?
Yeah, I can't hear you, Mayor.
We can hear you.
Yeah,
No noise.
yeah.
Click it from your screen. That's what happened to me yesterday. I had to click it on the screen. We can't hear you.
Shall we let Betty make the ask for the, yeah, Betty, why don't you do the roll call, or say aye and yay, whatever.
So can we get a roll call on how many people approve this? Just because we have people on the phone, can we call roll call?
Certainly. This is the motion to call the executive session for Monday and move the meeting time to 2 o'clock. DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor? Stark?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego? Still no sound from the mayor, but I think she was a yes.
She said
She's
yes.
a thumbs up. That motion passed unanimously. Are we hearing anything from the mayor yet? No. Okay. Mayor, while they work on your sound, we'll go ahead and move to the item B, which is budget update and financial status, if that's okay. Vice Mayor, okay, I got a thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Mayor, members of the council, this is the second meeting in our series on the revised budget, or the 2020-2021 Budget 2.0, as we're going to call it. The first meeting was last week, and so today we're reviewing more detail on our budget status so that we can present you a revised trial budget next week. You saw this slide last week with our schedule. We'll continue to develop information and find ways to receive community input so that we can present a proposed budget in May. That would then be what the council would approve conceptually in May, would roll forward to our formal adoption processes in June and in July. The news continues to be very concerning, as we all are aware, with unemployment climbing to record levels. Just yesterday, we saw, or just this morning, actually, we saw that evidence. 3 weeks ago, the U.S. unemployment claims, new U.S. unemployment claims, were 200,000. In Arizona were 3,000. Last week, we got word that U.S. unemployment claims set a record for any single week at 3.3 million, Arizona at 30,000. And just this morning, for this week that we're in, it again set a record of 6.7 million new claims for unemployment, almost 90,000 in Arizona. What that means is that in the United States in the last 2 weeks, 10 million people have filed for unemployment, and over 100,000, almost 120,000, have done so in Arizona. This has been a very significant and quick issue that is in development. So in the midst of all this, we need to develop a realistic budget that is not either too optimistic or too pessimistic. And being adaptable while remaining calm will be important. And so we have time to make smart decisions, and that's what we want to talk about today. I just wanted to share some principles that our Budget and Research Director and Deputy City Manager Jeff Barton and I are trying to work and follow as we give you the best advice we can and recommendations for a sound budget. We recognize that our employees' and residents' livelihoods and family finances depend on the decisions we make here together, and so we want to be very thoughtful in our advice to you. First, we are working to develop a deliberate process that's based on the best information available. We don't want to base our decisions or our advice to you on speculation or fear, but rather on the best sources we can find. We use the University of Arizona for our local and state information. Second, we're focused on setting budget targets that give flexibility to you as a council if the economy does better or does worse than projected. We don't want to set our number too high that we can't adjust it downward quickly if needed, but more importantly, we don't want to set a budget too low so that we might cut a service unnecessarily. Third, we're recommending preparing potential cuts in phases so that you're able to evaluate those cuts against the economy in real time throughout the next 18 months. That means we'll be assessing and adjusting monthly or even more often throughout 2020 and 2021. And finally, we want to focus on spending more than budgeting. What does that mean? What it means is that we know that the budget we give you is not going to be as precise as we're used to because the economic situation is so fluid and unknown. So whereas our budget department has gotten good at getting within 0.5% to 1% of revenue and spending estimates, we don't expect that we're going to be able to be that precise with how the pandemic is sweeping through the economy. So what we want to do, what we're focusing on in management is trying to focus on tightening up our spending regardless of what our budget will be, and that's our management focus. We want to get a budget as accurate as we can, but we can always work on the spending side in real time as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy City Manager, Jeff Barton, who will walk you through the scenarios that we discussed last week that we would be developing this week, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions. Jeff?
Thank you, Ed.
The mayor's back.
Mayor, members of the council, good afternoon. I was told to check also to see if Councilwoman Pastor has joined us and can hear us. Okay, Mayor, members of the council, kind of a recap to today's presentation. I'm going to go back to last week, and we talked to you about several things last week. First and foremost, we talked to you at length about the lag in our sales tax collections and how we would not have the results of what's happening to us this month until mid-May, early June. So that does present a little bit of a problem for us as we try to be as precise as the city manager mentioned that we have been in prior years. We do know, however, from anecdotal information such as the unemployment numbers, as well as what we're seeing happen in other states, as well as their projections, because they may have experienced this a little bit longer than we have, we know that the impact is going to be significant. We also know, which is accustomed to Phoenix, it's the Phoenix way, we do not wait to the last minute to adjust and fix problems. We start early. So we've already started buckling down on our spending, and we've already started, again, working on revenue forecasting and various scenarios, of which I'll walk you through 4 of them a little bit later in this presentation. We also know that there will be no general fund surplus as a result of what's happening now. Almost what happened to us in the Great Recession, we had a slowdown. What we're seeing now is almost a virtual shutdown or a stoppage. We're getting very little sales tax revenues in at this point in time. We don't know how long this recovery is going to last. And if you read any of the literature that's out there or watch any of the folks on TV trying to speculate as to how long this is going to last, it varies all over the place. You've got some folks talking about third quarter, fourth quarter, or all of next year. And so what we're going to present to you are 4 different scenarios that kind of monitor or mirror some of those discussions that you see out there today. And then finally, we do know that the pension impact as a result of what's happening in the stock market is going to be significant. However, those results won't be known until June 30th, and that's when the actuary closes the books on the pension on an annual basis. One other thing to keep in mind is that those impacts, whatever that impairment's going to be from a pension standpoint, it will not impact fiscal year 2021. So those impacts will be first showing themselves in fiscal year 21-22. So we have some time to prepare for that as well. I do want to spend a few moments before we jump into the scenarios and just provide a little bit more background information. As you well know, we are a very large government entity. However, we are a service provider. We provide a great deal of services to 1.6 million residents on a daily basis. And because of that, majority of our costs exist within our personnel cost, our people cost, our staff costs. And because of that, it's going to be very difficult for us to balance this budget without impairing those services or impairing, obviously, the pocketbook of some of our city employees, probably. So as we stand right now, we've got 78% of our current year general fund budget, which is about $1.2 billion, allocated to personnel costs. Then we've got roughly 14% tied up in contractuals, and those are the contractual services that our employees use to provide those services on a daily basis. And then we've got about 5% allocated to commodities, and those are the goods and services that our employees use to provide those same services. And then a little over 3% is allocated to capital and infrastructure types of investments. Last week at our presentation, Councilman Garcia had asked about the contingency fund, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking and walking through the contingency. The contingency fund is also known in many circles as the rainy day fund. And for us, again, for most people, again, the contingency is a one-time source of money. We do not replenish the contingency every year. It's funds that we hold in reserve and we carry them over year with the goal of not spending them. Per GFOA and according to the various rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, we should, on a best practices standpoint, have about 2 months worth of reserve, or about 6% or 16.7% of our operating expenditures in the contingency. Currently, we have $55.4 million in our contingency. That's a little over 4%. It's a little bit below what our peers and what the best practices are, but that is the highest contingency that we've ever had in the city of Phoenix, the $55 million, and on a percentage basis as well. Again, we are a little lower than our peers, but we make up for that by acting fast and acting sharply and quick, and that's what the rating agencies always tell us, that we have great and very sound financial management practices. The contingency is also, again, from my perspective as budget director, when I put that hat on, and my counterpart, CFO Denise Olson, the contingency is not to be used and should not be used to fix an ongoing budgetary problem. Again, that's because it's one-time revenues and one-time resources. And again, I want to emphasize again that the contingency itself and maintaining that contingency is credit positive. The rating agencies see that as a benefit to our rating. And if we were to spend the contingency and not replenish it, that would probably result in a downgrade. Last week, we also had some brief conversation on the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or the CARES Act. And you also got a great deal of information from government relations earlier this week in regards to that piece of legislation. What I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about was a little bit of the conversation we had last week. So we know that this is kind of fluid. This legislation is still being worked out. There are still various conference calls almost on an hourly basis every day to try and figure out what it means and how those funds are going to be allocated. We do know that there's $150 billion coming to the states. Of that, Arizona is expected to get over $4 billion. Of that $4 billion, about $2.8 billion is expected to go to state and local government. That allocation will be distributed as follows. 1.5 will go directly to the state of Arizona, and about $1.3 billion will go to cities and towns with populations over 500,000. That means Phoenix, Mesa, Tucson, as well as Maricopa County and Pima County will share in the spreading of the allocation of those funds. Now, last week, there was some conversation about this fund being able to offset our revenue shortfalls and help us plug these holes that we're projecting. And I want to read a brief passage from the legislation as it's currently constructed. It says that the $150 billion can only be used to cover costs directly related to COVID that weren't already covered in state or local government budgets. It goes on further to say that these funds cannot be used to make up revenue shortfalls. So again, I read that because I want everyone to be aware that as it's currently worded and as it's currently being interpreted, that $150 billion, or the 1.3 that's going to be allocated between the local cities over 500,000, will not be allowed to be used to replace our current revenue shortfall projections. So again, this is not going to be the magic elixir or the magic bullet to fix what we're projecting may happen to us over the next couple of months. So again, going back in time, back March 3rd, this was our status. We had $1,466 in resources and $1,438 in expenditures, which produced that $28 million surplus. Those revenues at the time, we thought very conservative. They were based on 4.2 and 4.3% state and city sales tax. At the time, those collections were in the 6 to 7% range. And then our costs were based on our zero-based budget process. So they reflect the cost of providing the exact same level of services to our residents in next year. So again, no increases, no enhancements, just the same level of service we provide today, but next year. So I want to talk to you now about the assumptions that went into our scenarios. The first is that our revenues are based off of the data that we've analyzed through the last 20 years, specifically that of the Great Recession. And we know that during that time, our revenues declined by between 6.3 and 12.3%, depending upon the different category. For example, user fees went down about 6.3%, vehicle license tax went down a little under 10%, state shared revenues was down about 10%, and city sales tax was down about 12.3%. So that's what we're using to model these four scenarios. Again, from an expenditure standpoint, I held the line on maintaining the same level of service throughout all four scenarios. So they reflect our base level scenarios. Each scenario reflects the $1,438 in expense. All four of our scenarios do reflect a deficit for fiscal year 2021. The size and magnitude of those deficits go from $26 million in the hole to $128 million. The severity of the deficit is largely based upon how long the downturn is expected to last. What we've modeled for you are four different models. One that assumes that the downturn ends in July, one ending in October, one ending in December, and then one that runs all of next fiscal year. So with that, I'm going to jump into scenario number one. And as a point of reference, I am showing on each of these scenarios our original starting point, which was that March 3rd status. And so from here, you can see that our revenues in scenario number one are expected to drop by about $54 million down to $1,412,000. And that's our resources. And our expenses are expected to be that $1,438,000. Again, I maintain that same level of expense in all four scenarios. So that produces a deficit of about $26 million. Moving on to scenario number two, we're going to see a revenue loss there of approximately $84 million. So our resources drop from $1,466,000 to $1,382,000. That produces a situation in which we have a deficit of about $56 million. This assumes that we have this downturn through October. Scenario three, assumes that we have a revenue loss from now until essentially December. That revenue loss is about $107 million. We assume the same level of expense, and this generates a reduction or a deficit of about $79 million. And finally, scenario 4, we assume in that scenario that we're going to lose over $156 million of revenue because this downturn would last from now all the way through next fiscal year. Our expenses being the same, what this ends up with is a deficit of $128 million. Again, that ends in June, and our deficit's $128 million, so that would require us cutting over $128 million to bring this back into balance. Looking at all 4 scenarios together, just so we can kind of put some clarity to this, again, you can see the range, and this chart is in millions of dollars, so we go from $26 million deficit to $128 million deficit. This assumes, again, those revenue shortfalls are based on data from the Great Recession. It assumes that we continue our same level of service in each scenario. And it also assumes that we have put the brakes on spending to the best of our ability. We're anticipating that we can generate about $15 million worth of savings this fiscal year to carry that into next fiscal year to help us cushion the blow. Otherwise, these numbers would be about $15 million higher than they are reflected on this screen. Again, we mentioned last week that it's not just the general fund. You heard from Jim Bennett, but there are other sales tax dedicated funds that would be impacted by this downturn. And so I want to kind of put some clarity on that for you as well. First and foremost is the convention center, largely based on tourism, hotel, motel, restaurant, and bar revenues. During the Great Recession, they saw about a 21.9% reduction to their revenues. We expect through these 4 scenarios, they would see a loss of $17 to $31 million in resources. Sports facilities, again, same principle as convention center, largely based on tourism, entertainment, and things of that nature. They saw a 21.9% reduction during the Great Recession. Under these 4 scenarios, their revenue loss would be between $6 and $11 million. Transportation 2050 would be almost exactly like the general fund. It's going to see losses between $31 and $75 million. And then our parks and preserve funds would see about a $5 to $11 million loss of revenue under these 4 scenarios. And last but not least, our 3 dedicated public safety specialty funds, Prop 301, which was passed in 1993, the Public Safety Enhancement Franchise Utility Tax, as well as the Public Safety Expansion Tax that was passed in 2007. Collectively, those funds would see between $16 and $37 million less revenue coming in under these 4 scenarios. So our recommendation today, again, we're flying a little bit blind, but we are using the best information that we have available currently. And as the city manager mentioned, our budget this year will be a very fluid budget. I think we'll adopt something that will possibly look drastically different than where we end kind of mid-year or at the end of next fiscal year. So we need to be very measured with our approach. We need to adopt a budget that is flexible. Like the city manager mentioned, we don't want to adopt a budget where we overreach, where we cut more than we really have to, but we do want to be prepared for that. So we're prepared to come back to you on Monday with a revised trial budget that will be based on scenario number 1. And under that, we will bring back to you $26 million worth of balancing options. I will also reach out to every department, general fund and non-general fund, and I will ask them to make reductions. For the general fund departments, I'm going to ask them to make 25% reduction.
Just to clarify, they're not making them, they're identifying them.
True.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
To identify those. And then we will go through those with those departments to develop a list that we could then bring back to you mid-year on those reductions if we need them. We'll continue to monitor the revenue situation on a monthly basis, and when it's time to pull the trigger on those things, we would at least have a list to work from. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor,
May I ask a question, Mayor? Oh,
I have a question. Okay, thanks. Jeff, this is pretty, is this going to affect our employees? Are they going to have to start looking at furlough days again? I mean, this just 25% is drastic. What are your thoughts on that?
Councilwoman Stark, that's a good question. Again, we have labor contracts that are in place now, and so the second year of those contracts would start next fiscal year. At this point in time, I'm not necessarily looking at that. We would start with service level reductions, but I'll defer to the city manager if he wants to elaborate.
Mayor, Councilman Stark, that is the issue, is when you start getting into significant, looking at significant things to reduce, as Jeff showed, our general fund budget is almost 80% personnel. And
Yeah.
so that means any reductions we do start getting into personnel. But as he said, we do have labor contracts that are currently in place. And so any discussion of that would have to be done in cooperation with the labor unions who we have the contracts with.
Thank you.
Mayor? Okay. Is it all right? I'm going to move on with my questions. I hope it's okay. I asked last time about the sports facility fund. If in this time or an emergency time, if we're able to tap into that and how much is in that. The other thoughts I had is I agree that we should be cautious, and I see that that money from the feds and the state is coming. I think what would be helpful for next week was to have a better assessment of where we're spending money in regards to COVID, and where we're going to be able to apply for that. Because from the numbers that were given today, it seems like we're going to be okay in the sense of there's going to be enough in that pot to cover some of these deficits. And so I would want to see a little bit more of where we're spending money now and where we can start projecting to see that will cover. And just the question on the sports facility fund. And then on the city and state tax, this is a question for Jeff. I know they're around 4.2, 4.3 now. It seems like folks are still spending. Is there a projected of what that's going to drop to?
Can you repeat your question, Councilman? I couldn't really make out your question.
On the city tax, I know it's at, how much is it? How much is that expected to drop?
How much will the city tax drop?
Oh, the city tax right now, again, when we look at this collectively, what we're talking about in the first scenario is losing about $54 million in total resources. Roughly, probably 30 to 40% of that's going to be city sales tax. Just looking at it anecdotally. I can bring an exact number back to you next week with that, but a large chunk, if you remember last week's conversation, majority of our resources between city and state come from retail sales. So as all these restaurants, bars, businesses are closed, we're taking in very little to no revenue in those categories. So that's going to be the biggest chunk. Now, the other question that you asked regarding the Sports Facilities Fund, if you recall back to one of the slides I showed in this presentation, that fund is going to be extremely hampered. So I don't believe, in my perspective, and again, we can bring back additional information next week, I don't believe that fund is going to be a source to bail us out of this. And again, I can let Denise speak to that maybe next week. As far as the COVID-related expenses, again, just reading through that paragraph of the current legislation as it's currently constructed, the COVID costs that we are bearing that were not budgeted, the act will cover that. Those funds will be eligible for that. But it's not going to be eligible for us to kind of continue our day-to-day operations. And so, again, from that perspective, this is not going to alleviate our problems. We have been working with departments to kind of track our costs related to COVID. Each department has a cost center that they're using to track those costs. But again, I don't think majority of those costs, Councilman, are going to be astronomical at this point in time. I think when we start getting into some of those assistance programs, like the utility assistance and the homelessness assistance, that's a whole different animal, and COVID and some of the CARES Act money provides directly for that. But in terms of money that the city is currently spending that was budgeted, none of those expenses are eligible under the current way the legislation is written.
May I ask a question? Or follow-up, really?
I think the mayor is saying, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right.
Her sound's not working again.
Gotcha. Okay. So to follow up on something Councilman Garcia asked about the sports facility fund. So I think that brings in maybe about roughly 20 million a year, and you've got it at 6 to 11 million loss, I guess. So it could lose half. But that money, let's just pretend there wasn't a stadium and there was just a fund. We could use that money for really any city service we deem. Is my remembering of the discussion before. And then from when the stadium thing passed, I think it was last year. My question would be, it's obviously the facility is not being used at present. Obviously, we hope that it will be soon again. They're making the changes, the adjustments to the stadium, presumably using that money. But are those still going on right now? I know they've been contracted before, but is there a way to delay some of those improvements with the participation of the Suns? Obviously, I'm sure we've got contracts and everything, but I mean, even $1 million or $2 million a year out of that fund, because it's not going to zero, would be helpful, and we can use that money for other things. Please tell me if I'm saying anything that's wrong, and is there a way to reach out to whoever we'd have to reach out to ask if that's possible in this dire fiscal emergency where we're going to have trouble paying police officers and so forth?
Councilman Waring, thank you for the question. We'll do a more in-depth analysis of the Sports Facilities Fund. One thing I would say about it is we actually do have a contractual obligation with the Suns for the money we agreed to spend on the arena, and they agreed to spend on the arena. So that money is contractually obligated. We will do an analysis of what the surplus might be, if any. I don't know that there will be any in the Sports Facilities Fund, and bring that as a report back to the full council.
So just to that point, though, I assumed it was pretty much all obligated, or certainly what was left was obligated. My point was, if we can all agree in these troubled times, to delay some of the improvements, the luxury seating or whatever it is that's going on over there that the city is paying for, I assume that part's legal if everybody agreed, and it could really help do really vitally needed services. So I would certainly hope at least the ask would be made. If we get a no, then you're right. I understand contracts and so forth. But, at some point you might want to ask, because that sure beats cutting police officers or something of that nature, I would assume. So thank you. I appreciate it. Mayor?
This is Sal.
Sal, the mayor sounds off, so if you can just go ahead.
Oh. No, sure. Thank you for that. You just don't know when you're on the phone, whether you can. You just don't want to be disrespectful to others either. To Jim's point, Ed, I think it's a good opportunity, too, to do more of an analysis. We had an analysis that basically showed, I believe, last year when this was going through with the Sports Facility Fund, that it was going to be break even. Obviously, with the economy today, it's going to be different. So what I'd like to see on that, too, is basically a breakdown of what the original proposal was, not proposal, but basically a pro forma was, and then base it on what you expect it to be today. And then there's going to be a gap in there. And Jim's right. It's about $22 million, if I remember correctly, about per year that it brings in. My understanding is that we were not going to use that full amount. So as we move forward on this, I think everything needs to be on the table, every single thing. And to pick and choose that on your end, and I know this kind of because this is how you guys think, and it's a good thing of what you think you'd like to see, but I really do believe you got to put everything on the table so that the council can look at it individually and make that determination. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to sign off on it. So I think everything should be on the table moving forward. But I think this is also a good exercise. Let's say the federal government does come up, and we do cover a majority of the cost. I understand how that $150 billion needs to be cut up, but let's say a good chunk of it's taken care of. It's also a good exercise for us as a council to be able to see where everything is going, and we can readjust that way too. Each of us are going to have our own viewpoints on certain things. Like, for instance, I'm very protective of police and fire, and think that that is our first foundation of what we need to do. But then there's going to be others that may not. But that's healthy for a city to do those things, and it's healthy for us to go through it. So, Jeff, on your end as well, from my end, I would like to see all those, and I'd like to see a pro forma on each, you know, what we looked at before, what our expectation was, but also where do we go now with that fund. But also, and I'm sure you're doing this already, Jeff, there's no doubt. I mean, there are three of us on the council that have already gone through this situation before, so that's why you're not getting a lot of anxiety from at least three of us, because we've been through this process before and we know how to do it with a cool head. But also take a look at positions at the City of Phoenix that are not filled, and I believe we run between a 7 and 10%. I don't know where we're at today, but roughly around 7 to 10% of those positions are not filled. That's the first place that we started in the past. So when you're looking at the 25%, I think we need to have not only a department by department look at what their expectations are, but also we need to be taking a look at, these unfilled positions and where they would be and whether or not we want to even take a look at those. And that was a discussion that we had in the past, but also take a look at overall the contracts that we have up that are going to be coming up and are, they're going to be an expense moving forward. We ought to be evaluating whether or not we still want to continue with some of these without breaking our contractual agreements that are already in place. So there are a variety of things that we ought to be looking at. And I think that this is actually, and I'm hoping, because I'm an optimist at heart, that, we're going to be looking at something that, and I think it's a good exercise for the entire council to go through, because especially the ones that have been here just recently, it's impossible for them to catch up on something this large. But they're doing a good job. I have to give Betty and Carlos credit at that, because they've really done a remarkable job of catching up and being ahead of the game. So from my end of it, I'd like to see more thoroughness, and I want to make sure everything's on the table. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, this is Councilman Nowakowski.
Michael, you can go first, and I can go after you.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, I've been here for 12 years, back with the last recession that we had. And one of the things that we did is basically plan ahead of time for the worst scenario. So I want to thank you, Jeff and Ed, for planning ahead of time of what's the worst scenario and having three different options. The other thing is, back in the last recession, we were about $277 million, I think it was, that we were in a deficit, and we were able to make that up. So I think with our good planning and having a good, healthy rainy day fund, that we'll be in good shape. We're up to about, 55 million, is it, Jeff, on our rainy day fund?
Correct.
And then the other thing, too, is I think with commitments that we have with the sports fund, that we need to be very careful of what we do there. The other thing is our bond rating. I believe the bond rating throughout all the cities in the United States are going to be affected by this. So it doesn't really concern me that much about the bond rating right now, because I think we're all getting affected by it, and there's going to have to be some type of help and understanding of the bond ratings. The enterprise departments, that was one of the hardest things when I first came into council, and for the new council members, is that basically these are enterprise funds where they kind of operate on their own. It's revenue driven. Basically, they're self-service. They generate monies to self-sustain themselves. So that's one of the things that was so fearful back in the last recession, is that once we start to not continue to make money on the airport, the water department, public works, and the convention center, that's where the major layoffs and happen in these departments. So that's one of the things that we need to really look at, is how to protect those enterprise funds and not to get to a level where we're going to have to do some hard decisions in the next year or so. So if you can just answer the question about the rainy day fund, how much we have in there now.
So yeah, we currently at 4% of our operating expenditures, which is $55.4 million.
All right, thank you.
And can you guys hear me now? I think the Vice Mayor is next.
Yes. So, okay, great. Jeff, so my question was the money that we're getting from the feds. From what I understand, that money is going to be used for coronavirus relief. Is that true?
That is, the majority of that 150 million has to go towards coronavirus related efforts. There are other monies that we're going to be starting getting in soon that will be used for homelessness, utility assistance, as well as other assistance programs.
So I would like to see a breakdown on how we're using that money, and then the money for coronavirus relief. I would like to see a report on how you think we should be using that money as well, right? Just for us to have an idea, what are you guys thinking? What is it that we should all be looking at on how we should be spending that money, to making sure that we can help flatten the curve here in Phoenix. And then the other thing, I just cannot echo enough what other people have said in terms of, making sure that when we're going and thinking about how is it that we're going to how is it that we are going to redo our budget, is making sure that we put our workers first, right? And making sure that we are, taking care of them first and doing whatever it is that we need to do to make sure that we take care of our employees as well, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there already thinking like what's going to happen to them. And I think them having the reassurance that we're taking care of them and that we're thinking about them first, and making sure that we throw everything at the table that we need to throw on the table, and do the adjustments that we need to do to making sure that we're taking care of our employees.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And
Thank you.
Jeff, you bring up a good point that this money has a lot of, it can be used in very narrow ways. Perhaps we could join with some of the national organizations to which we belong to urge Congress to give us more flexibility with the money so that we can backfill lost revenue. So groups like the National League of Cities could weigh in on this because it's a problem across jurisdictions.
And Mayor, members of the council, to your point, I think that movement is already afoot. I know there are several organizations and entities like GFOA through GFO. I know a lot of the finance officers, the CFOs of the cities across the country, the major cities, have already signed a letter and sent it to the Treasury Department. I know there are elected officials across the country that are also doing the same thing to try and improve the way that those funds could be utilized by states.
Wonderful. So, and maybe government affairs can make sure our delegation knows that this is a priority of ours.
Mayor, I have a question for Jeff.
Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you. Jeff, just to make sure I'm understanding you, the book you gave us with the proposed changes, increases in our budget, we could just throw away.
Pretty much, Council. Unfortunately, yes, Councilwoman Williams.
So we are back to where we were a year ago, looking at this year's budget for next year.
Well, what I would say, if you're talking about the inventory of programs document that you go through very thoroughly with your stickies and your little notes that you kind of ask me questions about from time to time, that document is still good from the standpoint of it still represents the baseline forecast for our services. So that is our base budgeted cost for all the different programs and services that we offer. That's still good. What is no longer good is the trial budget document that we sent out on March 9th or March 12th.
But I don't understand how you can have a budget and also have the binder that has the increase in programs. How does that work?
The binder that you're referring to does not have programmatic increases. If you recall, the way we do our budget, we have a modified zero-based budget. So next year's costs are simply the cost that it takes for us to provide the same level of service that we're providing today. There are no increases in that binder. The binder that you're referring to simply shows you the cost of each individual program that every department operates, and it shows you the cost this year plus the cost to operate that program next year. The only increases that you'll see in that book were negotiated salary increases, which are already contractually obligated to, as well as any other increases for things like utilities and water, electricity, and other contractual increases that are already embedded in those contracts. Everything else is flat and no increases. Where you have your increases are the trial budget document. That's that secondary document that we sent out March 9th or March 12th that we were scheduled to discuss with you on March 17th. That discussion did not happen because of all of the stuff that's going on right now. So the inventory of programs is a very good place to start. I imagine that's where most of our departments are going to start when they start looking at their 25% reductions. They're going to look at those services at that cost amount.
Okay, so the second one on the trial budget that you were sending out is the one we can toss.
Yes.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's the one that is no longer any good.
All right, thank you.
It was a beautiful
Mayor.
memory when we were adding programs. Yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I just was wondering, what is the estimated cost to the city regarding the Family First Coronavirus Response Act or the Employment Paid Leave Act? And will the city be reimbursed from any federal funds to cover any of these costs?
Councilman Nowakowski, that's a great question. Our understanding is that we should be reimbursed for any of those costs because it would be directly COVID-related costs. So we are tracking those leave code uses and other expenses that we're incurring for COVID response so that we can draw on that money from the federal government. So that's a great point.
And Ed, Mayor, may I continue with another question?
Yes, please do.
So, Ed, who and how would be people, who's eligible to actually qualify for these funds? And the second question is, can you give us a list of those proposed cuts that we're looking at? I know that you're asking departments to do that, so it might not be possible today, but in the future, can you please give us that list?
Certainly, Councilman. So the first question, who is eligible for the COVID funds? I think that was your question, or was it the Family First Relief Funds?
The COVID fund.
Okay.
So
So
that's one of the questions that we're asking.
Yeah, to the, I think it gets to the question that perhaps Vice Mayor Guardado asked, which was a breakdown of that spending. It really covers a whole range of programs. It's more CDBG money. It's more low-income heating and air conditioning money. We've discovered there's some money that could be used for water bills. So that goes across a whole bunch of programs. But the specific money to the city that Jeff described, that is what we're trying to get clarification on from the federal government about how that can be spent. But we will get a breakdown as our best understanding to where all the different components of that funds that are coming from COVID relief to Phoenix so that the council can see that. And then your second question had to do with, remind me that again?
It's just a list of
the cuts.
Funds that are going to be cut, yes.
Yes, thank you, Councilman. So actually, we haven't asked the departments yet to do that. So this is breaking news for us here that we are going to ask the departments to go through. Jeff is going to communicate with them formally tomorrow. So in the next couple of weeks, they will be developing their proposed lists. Those will be shared with the council. We wanted to get that list as broad as we could so that the council has options to look at for whatever number it is we ultimately might need to get to next year. So those haven't been developed yet, but when they are, we will certainly bring those to the council for a full review.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you for all your hard work and trying to put some money ahead of time and basically focusing on the future. So, Jeff, thank you for your leadership, and Ed, thank you for your leadership also.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Hello?
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Councilwoman Pastor.
Yes, there are three questions that I have. One is, I would like to know what the breakdown of the funding for the coronavirus effort, what is considered coronavirus. Because I think everything at this moment is considered coronavirus, or we could justify why for the federal dollars, but I would like to know the breakdown and understand what it is and where, if there's flexibility within there. The second thing is I would like to know about, we're talking about freezing or not hiring As we were told, I think last week or 2 meetings ago, that the possibility we need essentials. I want to know who the essentials are. I pretty much know, but I would like it on record. And then I want to know who the non-essentials are, if there is going to be any hiring of non-essentials. And then lastly, with the 55 million, 55.4 that is in the rainy day fund. Jeff, how long can we don't know how long this is going to last, but how long could we carry with the 55.4 million, continue to carry and keep our staff going?
Councilwoman Pastor, Mayor, members of the council, the $55 million, if you go back to the slide that I shared with you, from a best practices standpoint, they recommend 2 months worth of reserve, which is 4%, or which is 16.7%. We currently sit at 4%. The contingency would not last us long when you look at the standpoint of how much revenue we bring in versus what our expenses are. So it would not last us long. And again, from my perspective, I have to say this, and I have to say it over and over, and I'm sure the CFO would echo it. It would not be prudent of us to exhaust our contingency fund. It would actually not be a wise decision financially, because the contingency fund is one-time money. This is not a one-time problem. Even if we bounce back from this, we're not bouncing immediately back to the level of revenues that we currently have today. We're going to slowly build ourselves back up. And the contingency, unless you can replenish it immediately, it's not wise to use it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're saying it's not wise to use the rainy day fund. How long can we sustain ourselves at the level or the capacity that we're at if this continues another month?
Again, I think this year we're fine. I think I'm working with departments already to slow our spending. I think working with those departments, I've already identified approximately $15 million worth of savings that I think we can generate just by slowing things down. That $15 million is already baked into the deficits that I've shared with you today. If we did not slow that spending down, those numbers I showed you today would be higher by about $15 million. So again, can we make it through this year? Definitely we can. The question becomes, if this continues and it gets worse and it goes longer, that's why we need to identify the list of cuts.
Okay, so so yesterday on our agenda, we passed a 2.5 contract for landscaping. My question is, I understand that but my question is right now is that we have employees that are able to work, and I understand we have some of the equipment. They may not be trained at full capacity, but I know some are, that hire them to then play for any that we have out. And it's not just landscaping.
Mayor Gallego, Councilwoman Pastor, I think the contract that you're speaking of, again, it's a landscaping contract. So the city has thousands of acres of parkland that we have to maintain. Again, I don't think we want our parks to go overgrown. I don't think we want our parks to look unkempt, even during this situation. And so we use a combination of internal staff as well as external staff, contractors, to provide and make sure that those fields and those parks are maintained. I think the thing to remember is right now, I don't know that there is any employee that is really being impaired. I can't say that definitively, but I think, again, most employees right now, we're trying our best to make sure that people can work from home if it's possible. If it's not possible currently, then there is that opportunity to use the additional leave that came from the federal government program. And so we're continuing to evaluate this. As we identify positions that ultimately would end up being cut, our process has always been that we look for opportunities to move people into other positions, provided that they have the requisite skill set to perform that function. We can't just pull random people into a new job if they do not have the requisite skill set to perform that function. And again, I know landscaping, on the surface, it may be one of those things that you think everyone can do, but everyone can't drive a gang mower. Everyone can't operate some of the other equipment that our professional landscapers utilize.
So I'm going to be very clear on my response. 2 years ago, we had city employees, or 3 years ago, we had city employees operating our landscape. Then what happened is, for whatever reason, it was a good idea, and they were out of practice, and it was a good idea by staff telling us to move all our landscaping contracts to transportation and to then outsource our landscaping. So there are workers that do have the ability to landscape. I'm just saying we need to start thinking this way in order to continue and maintain our staff at the level that we have them. That is where I'm going with this, and wanting to and look at these innovative ideas on how we maintain and continue.
Councilwoman Pastor, to your point, as we get to more specifically, if we get to a point where we have to reduce and we identify what we do, you are correct. The first thing we want to do is to see whether we have city employees and other jobs that might not, that we might have to cut, that we can move into those jobs as you're describing it. So that review that you described is something we definitely will need to do.
Wonderful.
And after that, we can break the contract.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, we just voted yesterday on a $2.5 million contract, or possibly for the future. So I want to relook at.
I think, Councilwoman, all of our contracts have an emergency clause in them that allow us, in the case of financial disaster, allow us to get out of those. Most of our contracts have that provision.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor. And a reminder to people to mute your phones if you are not speaking. We will next go to Councilman Waring.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So there's been a lot of talk about this process and who's going to be included and how that's all going to work. I want to use an example, and it's the most recent one. I know it'll be controversial, but I'll just use it. So a month or two ago, the council added $3 million basically to next year's budget for the Citizen Review Board. So, but we haven't actually formalized like how that would work and who we're hiring, et cetera. If the problem is a $28 million deficit problem, then that alone is 10% of the $28 million. So it's a little more. So I guess my question would be, are those staffers we haven't even hired yet, are they essential? To Councilwoman Pastor's point about, are we hiring people who aren't essential? You know, are we still doing that? That's a new program. And it's just one example. There are others. We hired some international trade representatives and so forth. So, but I mean, it's a fairly big ticket item as these things go as new programs. I mean, how is that going to be handled? We've already voted on it. I mean, I voted a different way than the prevailing majority, but it's happened. So are we still forging ahead with that? Is that on the table? I'm sure there are other examples too. That's just the biggest, most obvious one I could think of that's so recent. How is that going to be handled? Because it's adding to the deficit problem. And obviously, to say it's essential, we've never had it before, so that might be a hard argument to make. Ed, can you talk a little bit about how we're going to deal with such items?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Waring, thank you for that question because it raises a good point of some of the different things we have. So as you pointed out, the City Council voted to adopt a civilian review model with it called the Office of Accountability and Transparency. That vote was to establish that office and to begin the work to develop the ordinance that would actually construct its roles and responsibilities and indicated a policy direction that it should do certain tasks. The council did not actually vote to allocate specific money and create positions for that office. That would be in the budget ahead. So to your point, we would need to have some agreement by the council in next year's budget as to how much money and how many positions the council would want to allocate to implementing the Office of Accountability and Transparency and the Civilian Review Board. In terms of so that hasn't been done yet, that money has not been obligated, but the council will need to make that decision as part of the budget decision. You mentioned the international, that's another example. The council took a policy position that it desired to create an international trade function or increase our international trade function. The concept was that there would be, I think, 2 more city staff who would be hired to do that and contracts. However, those staff had not been added and the budget had not been increased to do that. It was simply an indication that that's something that would be in next year's budget. Now the council will need to decide whether in fact an adopted budget would include those things or not. So those are a little different because they were sort of indicated as a policy direction, but they were not added technically into the budget yet.
Mayor?
Thank you. Mayor, if I can do a follow-up.
We'll stay with Councilman Waring and then go to Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you.
So,
Councilman Waring.
You know, it is, they were both, part of the reason I mentioned those two is they're kind of in the nether world of budgeting. You know, it's the reason I led with the citizens review is obviously, you know, it was a high ticket, whatever I thought about it, it's a high profile, frankly expensive program, but also people are now under the expectation that we're doing it. There was a lot of publicity and so forth, but we haven't done it yet. And obviously since that vote happened, the whole world, literally, I don't think anybody would claim this is an overstatement, has changed. Certainly though, without argument, our budget world has changed. You know, so the question going forward is, are we going to do new programs or programs like we've had the police hiring program in place for however many years? I mean, 7, 8, 9 years that's been planned and so forth. I don't know how the staff is going to balance that. I guess it's ultimately going to be a discussion for the full council, but I just kind of wondered how you're planning on presenting that, because these are all going to be binary choices. You can have X or you can have Y, but we don't have enough money to do both. How many people do you want to furlough so that you can start up the citizens review panel? I mean, that's maybe what it comes down to. Or how many employees do you want to let go? $3 million is a lot of employees. And certainly depending on what department you're in, I know how many police officers it is, but those are expensive employees. So there are other areas where it should be more employees. Can you give me any insight on like how you're going to address that with us?
I just lost sound from Jim, but I think we are ready to go for Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. Talking about the future budgets, what about we have now in the present? For example, we all were given some contingency money to work on issues within our district. We also just additional funding for our staff, and I think we should give that back at this point if we haven't spent it. I did spend some of my contingency money, but clearly if there's a way we can give that money back, I think probably we should do that.
Mayor, Councilwoman Stark, that's an example of something that's different from Councilman Waring, what Councilman Waring brought up. The addition to the council and mayor's office budgets was done mid-year, and it was actually adopted and funded by the council in that action. So taking that money out of the budget would certainly be an option for the council, but as it exists in the budget, it would be a decision to take it back out again. And again, all those little decisions are going to be wrapped up in ultimately the budget decision the council has to make. Councilman Waring, we could actually hear him in the chambers for a little bit past when I think everybody else did, but it's there are other steps that you can go through rather than doing all $3 million that we had originally proposed for the civilian review or zero. There may be some more modest steps in there, but again, that's something that the full council will need to decide, and we would work on as one of the details of the budget, along with what Councilwoman Stark brought up in terms of other mid-year additions that might be reviewed.
Mayor, can I ask Ed a question, please?
And just Councilwoman Stark, did that conclude your question?
Yeah, that would, but I want us to look at the scenario of what we approved mid-year and maybe return some of the money to help out our staff.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
And then Councilman Waring, did that conclude your question?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Now I can hear you beautifully.
You can. Okay, thank you. Well, I did what I wanted to ask, Ed. Thank you for coming back to me. So I think I got the gist from you kind of where I got cut off. So obviously these are controversial decisions. They are binary choices. You know, are we going to do new programs? How many people do we then furlough? I mean, how does that work? How are you going to present that to us, Ed and Jeff? I mean, how are you going to lay that out? Because that's a tricky thing, particularly with the higher profile, more controversial things. And I had forgotten about the expanding the staffs. You know, obviously I would concur with Deborah on that one. But, I mean, that's a kind of an easier one. For something like some of this other stuff, though, with the expectations out there in the public, how are you going to do that? And I'm just curious.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, I'm not sure we have that perfectly formed yet, but it's very clear we need to be transparent in that, particularly as it relates to things like the Civilian Review Board or the international programs. We would need to lay those choices out for you in a way that you can evaluate them against other choices that you have with those funds. But to your point, the council did vote to create the office and to create the ordinance, and so we will lay out different options for funding that at different levels that the council can choose from.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the honest answer of I don't exactly know, which I think is how I would summarize what you said. So, and I understand it was a tricky one. I was just curious if you had any hints at it. So, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you coming back to me.
Wonderful. And now to the very patient Councilwoman Williams.
Oh, thank you. My question is for Ed. When those were passed, a time was not set for implementation, I don't believe. We made assumptions, but I don't think it was formally made. As long as the intent is there, can it be delayed even for a year? I mean, it depends on the revenue and what's happening, but I'm very concerned because I don't want to cut any of our essential services to implement something new. Although I know it's important to some people, I think we're all very careful and have a good surveillance on what's happening in this community. And I don't think that by not funding it for a year, it would eliminate it or take it off the books so that it wouldn't be happen maybe the following year. Is that correct?
Councilman Williams, if I understand your question, I think you're talking specifically about the civilian review?
And also the international.
And the international? Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Williams, the choice for that implementation is really lies with the council. So the speed that you wish to implement it is going to be related to the money that you put to implementing it. So that's why it ultimately becomes a budgetary decision that the majority of the council will decide on. Is, as I said, there could be different levels on both of those programs that you mentioned that the council could choose from, and we will lay those options out for you.
Okay, but as you're laying the options out and you're adding, will you also be showing us what will have to be deleted to balance it?
Councilman Williams, yes, we will need to do that.
Thank you. And I also just want to report, I have a regular noise. It's almost like it's on a cycle, making a lot of noise that blocks my hearing from hearing what's being said.
Mayor, Councilman Williams, I understand our communications office is trying to troubleshoot that noise. On our end, we are not hearing that noise, but they'll try to identify what you're hearing.
Thank you.
It's an echo. Mayor?
Councilwoman Pastor.
I have a question. Jeff, in each of the scenarios that you presented, are you assuming the current situations will run through their whole time period? And what I mean is, for example, scenario 4, that goes all the way to June, but is that assuming that all the businesses are closed?
Mayor Gallego, members of the council, it doesn't. You have to realize and recognize the way that the sales tax works. Again, we have this 2-month lag. So what we're reflecting in scenario 4, for example, are that the actual negative decline in revenue would go through all of June's collections. So you could have businesses open prior to that, but what you're still seeing is month over month negative growth in your revenue streams. Because again, we won't see, even if it ends in say March, I won't get those results until May. Right? So that's what we're trying to model and trying to account for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other additional questions for staff? Thank you. Staff, do we have any additional information in the budget presentation, or are we ready to move to parks?
Mayor, thank you. No, we don't have any more. We will be back Monday with further information, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Jeff, Denise, and their staffs for your help in very uncertain times. We will next welcome our Parks and Recreation Department Director, Inger Erickson.
Mayor, members, and the council, today I'm here to provide information about parks, golf, and trails, and the measures that staff have taken to educate park users and to help reduce the exposure to the coronavirus at the outdoor park facilities. Just to provide a summary of parks, golf, and trails, the inventory listed on the slide includes 185 parks, 12 dog parks, 7 skate parks, 8 golf courses, 41,000 plus acres of desert parks and mountain preserves, 200 miles of trails at 40 trailheads, and hundreds of neighborhood access points in the trail system. And that's just to name a few of the assets that we have. To provide information on the authority to close or limit access to the parks and trails, I've outlined various scenarios that exist. Under normal circumstances, the Parks Board has the authority to limit or close recreational facilities. Under normal circumstances, a short-term closure authority is given to the Parks and Recreation Director under City Code Section 2441 for 7 days for a health emergency. In a local emergency, authority to close or modify operations is given to the City Council to safeguard safety and health. Finally, the governor's orders declare public parks, outdoor recreation areas, activities, and facilities are essential. Temporary closures or limited closures or restrictions on specific areas or trails are permitted to protect public health where the enforcement of social distancing and public healthy guidelines is difficult. So what we have done so far as it relates to parks, golf courses, and trails, based on the declaration of a local emergency, the following measures have been taken. We have posted closure signs at all the parks, noting which facilities are closed in English and in Spanish. We have closed playgrounds and caution taped them off to signal that these are not available for use. We have removed volleyball nets and blocked basketball hoops so that they could not be used. Other measures we have taken in parks include sports field lights being turned off, basketball and volleyball lights being turned off, fitness equipment in parks closed, and sports complexes closed. This includes Rose Mofford and Encanto. Amenities that are currently open in parks include tennis courts, pickleball courts, dog parks, skate parks, disc golf, ramadas, restrooms, benches, walking paths, drinking fountains, and green open space. And I'll wait till the slide gets caught up here. As you know, Easter is a very, very busy time in our park system. Several council members, and this is just a picture that shows you some of the activity that happens in Easter at some of our parks. Several council members have asked us about our plans to manage the parks on Easter. And here's another picture of just families gathering to have barbecues and enjoy the park open space. The pictures show you that large gatherings are really difficult for us to maintain any kind of social or physical distancing. So I have some options to consider for Easter weekend, which is April 11th and 12th. Option one would be to limit parking, to eliminate parking in parking lots, only have them open for walk-in availability. Our restrooms would remain open. We would not allow groups of more than 10 people, and rangers and park staff would be available to educate and communicate to people who are in the park. Some potential impacts would include some nuisance parking in neighborhoods, as well as families will likely drop off picnic supplies curbside and just walk them into the park. And that's option one. Option two for Easter weekend would include a partial closure of parks. We wouldn't allow parking in the parking lots. The restrooms would remain open. We would not allow picnicking. We would have the park only open for walking and access to green space for people who need to get access to the outside and have a exercise opportunity. Rangers and park staff would still be on site to educate, and again, some potential impact to the community might be parking in neighborhoods. The third option would be to close the parks for this weekend of April 11th and 12th. No parking would be allowed in the parking lots, the restrooms would be closed, and no activity would be allowed in the parks. We would still have to have ranger and park staff available on site to educate. And this option would be allowable under the governor's order as it is for a specific and limited time period. Moving on to the golf courses. At the golf courses, staff have taken significant measures to reduce touch points on the golf courses. For example, the restaurants have been closed, takeout orders are available on selected days, beverage and food service is available through the cart service on the course. Golfers have to leave the flag sticks in the holes. Cup liners are inverted so that there's less touching. We've removed any other kinds of items that people could touch that other people then would additionally touch. And the practice ranges, the golf ranges have been reconfigured so that there's space between people at the driving range. Additional measures taken at the golf course include limited access to the golf shops, physical distancing signage, as we do in the other facilities. We added plexiglass today for customer service shields for our staff, and we're encouraging walking instead of golf carts. An additional note to note is that Grand Canyon University will be reopening their golf course on Friday, April 3rd. So moving forward, future direction in golf, the legal opinion that I've heard is that any other restrictions we would have on golf courses to either close or limit them would potentially be in conflict with the Governor's Executive Order 2012. Now moving on to the hiking measures that we've put in place. They include the signs in English and Spanish for physical and social distancing. We've limited access to 5 trailheads effective on March 28th of this year. We closed the parking lot immediately adjacent to Hole in the Rock, which is at Papago Park. We closed Cholla Trail access point primarily to do mitigation of some of the rocks that were loosened because of the recent rain that we had. And you can see the picture on the screen there. That picture is on Cholla Lane when we implemented the closure of Cholla Trail. There was immediate respect by the hikers by not parking there, and that was immediately the first day that we did that. I'm sorry, that's Invergordon, yes. The other thing that we did is we limited and managed access at 4 of the most heavily trafficked trailheads. These areas were considered because of not only the volume of hikers, but also the narrow nature of the trails. So that's Echo, Paestoa Peak, Pima Canyon, and the Dobbins Lookout in the upper areas. That is mainly a drivable location. Hole in the Rock, when we implemented these modifications, saw a 60% decrease immediately. And so again, people are listening to the directives that are being given. And we also saw at the other trailheads between 30 and 70% reduction depending on the particular trail. So considerations on limiting or closing trailheads, just as some point of information, we have 80 rangers that manage our parks and preserves. We have 40 different trailheads, the parking lots where there's trailheads with parking lots. There's hundreds of walk-in secondary access points, and we have many, many areas that people have just decided to walk in and they're not designated. One of the concerns for blocking off all the parking lots would be that parking would spill out into the neighborhood, and it has in the past. But some of the council members have asked about ideas about closing or limiting specific trailheads, and these are some of the things that would be contemplated to do so. And with that, I'd ask if there's any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember, questions?
Mayor?
Councilwoman Williams.
I have questions. I'm going back to Easter. Is it possible for Easter to close off the ramadas to make sure they're taped off, just like the children's playground and some of the other features we have in the parks, so that people can also be advised early, like this weekend, that no family picnics, no large groups. It has to be 6 feet apart. We have to follow the same restrictions. So people are aware that the parks are not the place to go for your family reunions, for your big family dinners, and still keep the park open for the other uses.
Mayor, members of the council, this is Ed, the city manager. It might be useful if we start with Easter, as Councilman Williams has done there, because we have actually 3 decision points, at least 3 today, which would be council direction on Easter weekend in our flatland parks, golf courses, and trails. So those are actually 3 sort of separate conversations. There might be a 4th, which is whether there's a desire to limit anything further in our flatland parks. But particular to Easter, Inger's gone back to that slide with the options. So, Inger?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilwoman Williams. So option 1 would be people could still have their small group picnics, and that would really be that, and open space would be available. Option 2 would be, I think, closer to what I heard you say, which is no picnicking allowed, but the park would be open for walking and activity in the open green space. And again, social distancing, physical distancing, as well as small groups. And then the last one would be total closure of the parks. Those 2 days, just nobody would be allowed to be in the parks.
Yeah, I don't think that would work. People are too and full of habits. And I think without education and preparing for the partial closure beforehand, you're going to have an unruly group and people just going ahead with their planned activities. So I don't support that. I think telling them small groups are allowed, they could still use the park, walk around, whatever, 10 or more people is not prohibited or is prohibited. I just think getting the word out immediately is what's so important for the safety of our citizens in the park. So I'll comment on the other two at a later time. I'd like to see what we decide on for Easter because I think that's very important and we need to do that immediately.
And Councilwoman Williams, just to make sure I got what you were saying, I would summarize it as that you support option 2, but you would prefer to close the ramadas sooner?
Yes, I think we could go ahead and close the ramadas off. I leave it up to Inger on the restroom. She knows better than I if we're experiencing more vandalism and problems than use. But I think it's important that we close the ramadas off now, not only the flatlands, but I think in all the parks.
Mayor, can I follow up?
Councilwoman Stark, yes.
Yes, so Inger, what are we doing to keep the restrooms clean? Is it every 15 minutes, every hour? What are we doing? Because I think maybe we should close them under option 2.
Mayor,
As well.
members of the council, Councilwoman Stark, right now we're cleaning them once a day at the very beginning of the day. One of the concerns that we have as staff is if the restrooms are closed and people need to use the restroom, that the problem then will be moved to the outside of the facility versus the inside of the facility where it's a little bit easier to clean up. And that's what our concern is about closing restrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we have many people who would like to provide comments primarily in opposition to closing trails. My hope is that we would have a motion on the table before we take comments, just so that we could be getting comments on an accurate reflection of what we are likely to do. I do not wish to close all of the mountain parks, and I believe that is the sense of the council. Although we have many, many different opinions, obviously, and each of us will share their own opinions. Councilman DeCiccio.
Oh, I didn't ask
I'm sorry,
a question yet, Mayor. I'm just listening.
No? Oh, Councilman Garcia? I'm sorry, it was a male voice. Was it? I'm sorry, who was the male voice?
It was
All right,
not
Councilmember comments of any gender.
So this is Councilmember Garcia. I think for Easter, I think we should shut down the entire park. I think we should go with option 3. I know it's coming from a traditional Catholic community and family. I think it's a hard decision, but I think it would be impossible for us to keep families away from each other, especially large families. They will all come together, balls roll from one picnic to another. I think the responsible thing to do is option 3. And I agree, maybe considering ramadas closing from now until the crisis is over. That's where I'm at with that. On golf courses, I think, I know it disagrees with what the governor says, but the governor is completely wrong on a lot of his essential lists. And so I believe it is our responsibility to do what's right, both for our city employees and the residents of Phoenix. So I think we should close down the golf courses as well. And with the trails, obviously, I think I don't know where people are at. Mayor, you voiced your opinion. I still think people are walking through the same area. And Inger, I would want an update. I know one of our parks employees has tested positive. The last thing I would want is to have our employees out there having to enforce social distancing and putting them at risk. And so I would continue to be insistent on closing all trails. I think people are walking through the exact same area, and we're exposing our employees to be out there trying to manage people when we can simply just do what's right and tell people to stay home. That's what across the line is the recommendation during this emergency, for people to stay home. So I think any decision that we make, we should take people's health into consideration, and that the safest, best thing we could do right now is keep people home.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia.
Mayor, may I say something? No.
Councilwoman.
I think I heard Councilwoman Pastor first and then Councilman Waring.
Yes.
Fine, thank you.
I agree with Councilwoman Williams. I was looking at several of our parks within the District 4 area, and the ramadas there was no social distancing happened in the ramadas. There was a group of 20 sitting and just enjoying life, which is great, but right now we're doing social distancing, and we need to really be cognizant of that. The other piece is that once they leave, I don't believe those ramadas get cleaned or sanitized, and if another 2 people or 3 people come, then we have another issue. I think for the responsibility that we have a public health crisis going on right now, and we have to do what's best for everybody regarding the public health. So I just wanted to echo Councilwoman Williams. I am in favor of option 3 too. I think we need to just be able to stay home, have our picnics at home, be able to do that within the area that we're confined to. So.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor. We will go to Councilman Waring, followed by the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make a point that came up on one of these calls, and I can't remember exactly which one. I do remember which member said it, but I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. It was a good point that I hadn't really thought about regarding this issue either, but it had come up previously on the police issue, that different neighborhoods, different districts react differently. All I can really speak about is the area I represent, and what I've seen in very limited trips to the grocery store, and as I mentioned on the call the other day, or the meeting the other day, what I see when I'm out taking walks, which I'm now doing, which I hadn't really done before, or at least not for years. So, you know, I see pretty much 100% compliance with the social distancing. That's at least what I observed. That's what I've observed on park trails. That's what I've observed walking on the street. But one thing I have noticed specifically is many more people, and there seems to have been an uptick the last couple days since we had that last meeting, and I've definitely been paying attention, but it's definitely more, is people out walking through neighborhoods. I know people who I'm one of those people who aren't normally out walking in neighborhoods, but now I am. But I do think you have people staying closer to home, and I'm seeing a lot of families and a lot of little kids walking together, like on the streets. And because the people I see are trying to comply, if you see somebody coming from 50 feet away or more, you cross to the other side of the street. But there's not always, depending on where you are, a sidewalk, like in my neighborhood, a sidewalk on the other side of the street. So now you're walking in the street, you're crossing traffic and so forth. Not everybody lives close to a park, so it just kind of depends. There might be people doing that anyway. They can't go to the gym. They can't play on, like my kids on the soccer team or anything because that's all canceled. So you have people out trying to get the exercise they're not getting in other avenues. I just fear if you're going to add more people by closing the trails and you're putting them on the street, there's still probably not that much difference in terms of the spacing. Having done both, I haven't noticed that much difference. They're far away, but they're not really demonstrably further if you're crossing on the sidewalk or you're on the trails, particularly, depending on where you are, of course. I would question if we're really addressing, you know, the problem. People are going out. I would also say to the other parts of the plan, do we have enough rangers to enforce this? Wouldn't we, by definition, be putting, and certainly employee health is a concern of mine as well, but the more the rangers have to interact with people, because people aren't going to hear this news, they're still going to go to the park. Or some people are going to say, I'm going anyway. That's ridiculous. I'm sure there'll be some of that. I would hope not, but I'm sure there will be. Wouldn't we be then, by definition, having the park rangers interacting more with people than they might normally to basically kick them out? And I'm not pretending everybody in District 2 or surrounding areas are going to act perfectly, But it does seem like most people, pretty much all of them that I've seen, particularly at the grocery store where it's more confined, people have adapted very quickly, and I would argue very well. So have the businesses in managing it. The grocery stores, at least some of them, but the one I primarily go to, they have security guards now, and they're letting seniors go in first. And then, they open it up to everybody else, an hour or so later. I mean, people are really seem to be trying, at least what I've observed, and I appreciate that. And I think we should, frankly, trust them more because the parks are, by definition, spread out. You are apart from people. And I'm a little concerned, not only how this is going to be received, but the practical impact of enforcing it. And if we're really going to be making things safer for citizens or employees. So I just want to make that point. I do think maybe behavior is different in different parts of the city. I'm not questioning anything you guys are saying about what you're seeing on trails. I don't want it to come across like that. It may be that, behavior is just different in different parts of the city. I don't know the answer to that, but, or if it's even real, but I just know what I've observed. I'm not sure more restrictions on the parks is necessary. I just want to say that, Mayor. Thank you, though. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Mayor?
Councilman Waring. Vice Mayor. And Vice Mayor, I cannot hear you.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. So I just think that, as we're talking to folks, talking to constituents, and we're trying to get everyone to stay home and flatten the curve and just going out for essentials, even though there's only so much limit that we can do as a city, I think actions speak louder than words. So I do want to go with option 3 for when we're talking about Easter. I think we should definitely go with option 3. And I do believe that some areas of town are very different from others. Unfortunately, at least I don't want to speak for 7 and 8 and 4, but at least in 5, we still have a lot of families that are out working. Kids are being left at home. Children are going out in the parks. So I think there is a very different dynamic in some parts of the city than others, and I think we do need to confine the message and be very strong with the message of asking people to stay home. So definitely very in favor of going with option 3. I think also shutting down the Ramadas as well. I think we should shut down the Ramadas. I think it'd be very important to do that as well. And I think the other thing, I know that we've already had someone in the Parks Department tested positive for COVID-19, and I know that there's a lot of workers out there, that are very scared coming into work every day now and not knowing exactly how they're going to go back home to their families. And then another option would also be maybe that on Mondays we don't open the parks till 12 o'clock if we do decide to keep the bathrooms open and other areas open, and then we just really sanitize our parks as well. But definitely very in favor of closing down the parks for Easter. And then I still feel strong about the trails in other areas, and the golf courses, just because if we are saying that we want people to stay home, then I think as a city we do have that responsibility to have an aligned message and really encouraging people to stay home, because it is true. I wish everyone would just comply with us just saying that, but I think enforcing things is very important. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And just to continue to refresh, option 2 was restrooms remain open, no picnicking, but you could walk around the parks. And then option 3 is restroom closed and no activity allowed. I lean towards option 2, and I think we have a consensus, or we are getting to a consensus around just closing the Ramadas. Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to give at least a level of, credibility to what Betty and others are talking about with option 3. I understand why you're doing that, because what it does is it treats everybody the same. And if you want to send a message of complete closure, I mean, if that's what people are believing in. But I think what you're finding out is that we're all going to be picking and choosing what those things you want to believe in. And I think that's what's occurring. But so from your end of it, I like your purist position, even though I don't agree with it. That's why I'm not supportive of any of the options, because from my end of it, I don't think it's fair to do one thing or another. I mean, if you look at it, the trail system has a heavy impact on my district, Jim's district, I even think Felda's district, and some in Deb's district as well. And those are the people that we represent. The flatlands, my district does use them, but not as much. So from my end of it, I think, I would need to be pure on it, and I would need to be, it's hard to tell someone to do something if I'm not willing to do it on my own. So for my end of it, I think that Parks is doing a really good job. I would really hate to see us close down our trail system. I think it's something that the public, and yes, it's heavily used. I was just out there this weekend, and I was out there just recently, and the parking lots are definitely full. But you don't really run into people. People are very respectful. Right now, if you're not respectful on the trails, people will yell at you. There's a lot of social, what's the word for it? A lot of social conditioning out there. So people do stay away from others. I mean, every now and then you're going to get one or two, but, out of respect to the other members who don't support that, I get it, and I get your reasoning for it. I just don't have to agree. So from my end of it, I don't support either of the options, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. I lean towards option 2, and I do have some big parks in my district, Roadrunner, Rose Moffett, and I've noticed that people are keeping their distance, but they're enjoying the parks for a walk, simply for a walk. But I do think we should close down the Ramadas. That may help as soon as possible. That might send a message about Easter, but I think I go for option 2. Also, I don't think we should shut down the trails at this time. And Sal, I do have a lot of mountain preserves in my district. Probably is almost as much as you do, but I'm just saying, I think right now is not the time to shut the trails down. They do serve a purpose, especially because there's exercise involved, you get sunshine, it's good for your mental health. So I would go along with option 2. Hopefully we can get the Ramadas closed sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I make a motion?
And actually, before you make a motion, may I ask a question about golf carts? Inger, so many communities have just stopped renting golf carts, so will you talk about that a little bit?
Mayor, members of the council, indeed, we still are allowing golf cart rental. That is something that we could adjust given direction.
Mayor, on golf carts?
Councilman DeCiccio.
You can always put one person per golf cart, and they do get cleaned pretty well afterwards. I mean, from a guy who plays golf, so you could always put just one person in there if there's a concern. There are ways to work on every concern that we have. Every one of these can be controlled or put in a way that still allows people to enjoy a park service and at the same time provide the security that others are, that people are looking for. So with golf carts, you can always just put one person in there and then sterilize them afterwards.
And I actually know for a fact that the governor's office has approved, Surprise has a policy where you can only, it's a one person per golf cart unless you're a relative. So with that, Councilwoman Williams, you have a motion.
I do. I would like to make the motion to go with option 2, noting that the trails stay open. We still have limited parking spaces, We close the Ramadas immediately. Bathrooms remain open unless Parks comes back and there have been many violations, destruction, etc., and recommends we close them. The golf course remain open, but limit one person to a cart unless it's a relative. And I believe that's my motion.
And Councilwoman, would your motion include also supporting what Inger has already started doing?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Wonderful.
May I
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Oh,
I think I heard a second, but could you repeat it and say your name?
I
will second.
I'll second it. Michael, I think you're on mute. I know you're waving at us, but I think you're on mute.
Okay, so we have a second from Councilwoman Stark. Because Councilman Nowakowski has not spoken in a while, I will go first to him if he is able to hear us.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Now
we can.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, Mayor, first of all, I just want to really thank the Parks staff and Inger for all the things that you guys have put in place in the last week. I've been to some of the trails and the parking distance and all that. Your staff is doing a great job. And one of the things I see out there in my neighborhood is families for the first time. I see a lot of families walking with their kids, riding their bikes, and also enjoying our parks. I believe that if we close off the parks, it's going to be a way, there won't be an outlet for these families, and they'll be out on our streets, and it'll get dangerous with some of the cars driving by. So I believe that option 2 is the best option. The only concern I have is Easter. If there's a way to close just the Ramadas, maybe on Easter Sunday, just to limit individuals wanting to have a Easter picnic out there, that's some of my concerns that I have. And I just want to really thank once again the park staff for their sacrifice and trying to make this all happen, and all the families that are out there trying to find things for their kids to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski. Councilman DeCiccio.
Mayor, just to clarify, option 2 does, to Councilman Nowakowski's point, I'm sorry, Councilman DeCiccio, option 2 does include closing the Ramadas on Easter, but it also includes closing them sooner than that. So they would be closed on Easter. I'm sorry, Councilman.
Oh, no. I'm glad you did. You clarified that point. So my question is, the option 2, I just want to be very clear, says no parking in the parking lot, correct, Inger?
Mayor, members of the council, and Councilman DeCiccio, that's correct. No parking is actually on all 3 of them.
So let's take a look at Pima Canyon, which I think has probably the most amount of parking of any of the parks, at least the ones I see at least. What do we have there? Maybe 200 parking spots, something like that? It's quite a bit, yeah. Especially if you go all the way up to the road.
Mayor and Councilman DeCiccio, the parks that we're talking about parking closed for Easter is just the flatland parks. The limitations would still stay in place for hiking trails.
Oh, so basically there's no impact on the hiking trails.
No new impact.
So what
correct.
you're talking about is, okay, so you're limiting parking on the flatland parks, but not on that was my misinterpretation then, on the trails.
Councilman DeCiccio,
okay,
the trails would remain as they are today, which is limited at those locations we've already limited.
So just to be clear, the flatland parks parking lots would be closed on Easter Saturday and Easter Sunday. The hiking parking lots that are currently restricted, Pima Canyon being one, would continue with those restrictions, but they would not be closed on Easter because they're not flatland parks, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. So we're only talking about Easter, correct?
Councilman DeCiccio, that's correct.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking going forward on everything. I'm sorry. That's the problem with doing these things telephonically. You can't really see what other people are saying, and it's easy to judge that way. So the bottom line is, I want to be sure I'm very clear, closing the flatland parks on Easter, then reopening them again, Inger?
Mayor and Councilman DeCiccio, we would close the parks for picnicking, and if number 2 is the one that is chosen, there would be no picnicking, no Ramadas, because Ramadas, if again what you're proposing goes forward, the Ramadas would already be closed. So there would be no parking. There would be only access to walking and also green spaces and things that were still open for people to enjoy in the park, but you could not picnic in the park on Easter. Monday, then, when Monday comes around, that'd be Saturday and Sunday. Monday, after Easter, the things that were open before we closed for Easter, which is the parking lots and the various amenities that are still open, like dog parks, those things would remain open again.
Okay, so we're just talking Easter, correct?
Yes,
I just want to be
correct.
really clear.
That's
Okay.
correct. With the exception of the
And
remodels.
no more impact on the trails. Well, if that's the case, then it has virtually no impact in my district. So I don't mind supporting that. I would go along
Mayor,
and
one last
support just that.
We will go to Councilwoman Pastor and then Councilman Nowakowski.
I have a question about the motion. So the motion is, it includes the ramadas. Inger, if you could go back to screen 9 or on the PowerPoint. I'm looking at skate parks. And that's one of the amenities that is still open. And just as I understand it, or as I witnessed, skate parks are where the young men and women go, but they crowd around and they usually travel together. How is that being managed?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, usually when folks are actually doing the tricks, they're doing it by themselves. We can continue to educate and post staff at the skate parks to manage that. We do have plenty of recreation staff who usually work in our community centers who want to work, and that's something we could do by placing them there and educating the youth, and again, helping them keep safe distancing.
Okay, and then my second question, when you say walking path, is that the walking path like at, for example, I'll use in Cannell Park? You know, the walking path or the mile, the Fit Phoenix mile, is that what you're including? And then green open spaces, what do you consider green open spaces? Are those the trails, or is that like Indian Steel or the parks?
So Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, the walking paths are any of the paths that are through the park itself. Many of them are actually marked for walking trails, our Fit Phoenix path. So any of the sidewalks would be open for people to walk to get exercise. And open green space is basically any of the place where you can maybe, run around in the grass. I've seen kids flying kites. I've seen kids throwing paper airplanes that they've made, those kinds of things. The space would be open for those kinds of activities.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, one of the things, sorry about that. Inger, one of the things that we see during Easter are those signs saying, please park at certain areas. For example, Cesar Chavez Park. Is there a way to actually have those signs up telling people that the parking lots are closed? I know two major parks that people go to are like Cesar Chavez and the South Side, and Central Phoenix is in Cannell Park. And is there a way to have those digital signs up telling people the parking lots are closed Saturday and Sunday, there will be no more parking? And the other thing is, how do we help the neighborhoods in that neighborhood, especially around the Cesar Chavez and Cannell Park, that always gets filled with people? If you block the parking lots, what's stopping people from parking in the neighborhoods? And is there a way to warn people not to park in those neighborhoods? And with that, too, I'd just like to throw a shout out to Craig and Teresa Lyon from Enchanted Island. They give out more than 10,000 Easter eggs every Saturday and Sunday of Easter. And it's just incredible. It's been a tradition out there. When it was my district, we started that, and it's just incredible. And I know Laura has continued that tradition. So, and they're really sad that they can't do it this year, but there's always next year. So we just want to make sure people know there's no Easter egg hunt at Cannell Park this year.
Councilman Nowakowski, just to answer your questions, signboards were found to be very effective when we did the trail closures or the limited parking at the trails. So yes, we can get those as well. But I think we also need to do a very strong campaign in all sorts of media outlets to make sure that people understand that unfortunately this Easter, the parks are not available for their picnics.
Mayor?
Thank you. I think that is a great suggestion, Councilman Nowakowski, about how to reach out. The signs on the way into the park will be very helpful. We will go Vice Mayor and then Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you.
So on, Inger, question for you. On option 2, it says that we are going to have park rangers out there for option 2. Is that correct?
Vice Mayor, indeed, we will have, in all options, we will have staff in the parks because, again, we know that not everybody will get the information, but we will be in full force, including myself, out at parks just to make sure we communicate to people clearly what the expectations are in the parks.
But to be clear, we do not have enough rangers to have a ranger at every park. So it may not be 100% coverage all the time, but we will deploy all of our staff to cover as much as possible.
So when it comes to the staff, are they trained to be able to keep social distancing between themselves and making sure that they don't get infected on Easter weekend? Like, what type of precautions are we taking with employees? Are we giving everyone gloves? Like, what are we doing to protect all the employees that are not rangers and that we're gonna have out there at the parks?
Vice Mayor, we do have protective equipment for everybody. Anybody who works in the park would have gloves available to them, just like our maintenance staff do today and our rangers do today. We obviously would not be entering that 6-foot space. We would be communicating from a distance for folks. And again, this is what our park staff do day in and day out as far as communicating to people about what's expected and what's not expected in the park. It's just a change of what the words are going to be now. These things are no longer acceptable and these things are still acceptable, and just making sure our staff understand what they are. But we've got many recreation staff that work in our after-school programs who are interested in helping us not only during the week but also on Easter. And we will be training people, again, clarifying what can and can't be done to make sure they keep themselves safe as well.
Thank you.
Mayor?
I think Councilman DeCiccio was next in the queue. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll be
and then
really quick. I'll be really quick, Mayor. I do a lot of work in the disability community, and one of the concerns I've got is disabled parking. So if you could make that a part of your motion, I'd be happy that we keep the disabled parking there, during those days, those Saturday and Sundays.
I agree.
I guess I don't see how that, would you talk about how that would be possible?
We gotta find a spot for them. Oh, sorry.
Mayor and Councilman DeCiccio, we do have designated spots in all of our parking lots for people who have physical limitations. So again, we will have staff in the park, and if that's something that's necessary, we could allow that by removing the barricade temporarily, letting that one car come in, and then closing the barricade back up again.
Okay, that's good. Does that need to be part of the motion then, or how does that work?
As a motion maker, I agree.
Yeah, I think you're going to need to put it in there and clarify that, because we do have a significant number of individuals that are handicapped, and I think it'd be critical to not limit access to them.
I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't thought of it, but you're absolutely right.
Well, I've got a good friend of mine, but either way, yes. Thank you for that, Zelda.
As a second, I agree to that as well.
Mayor?
And I think I heard Councilwoman Pastor and then Councilmember Garcia.
I got several calls within the last 2 days from park employees and including rangers. And my question to Inger is, if they feel like they're unsafe or they feel like they're at risk, do they have the option to stay home?
Councilwoman Pastor, I missed the last part of what you said. Can they work from home? Is that what you said?
do they have the option to stay home, especially Easter?
Councilwoman Pastor, that is correct. Easter is generally our weekend where we allow people to volunteer and go through the process of the weekend coverage. And so all they would need to do is communicate to their supervisor, and we would work through that detail.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. They have the option to stay home if on Easter, if they feel that they're at risk.
If that is not their designated shift, yes. If it is their designated shift, they would need to take the appropriate leave.
Okay, so you just shifted what you just originally said. You did not say designated shift. What you said originally was, yes, they could volunteer and be able to not work on Easter. Then it shifted to if it's their designated, take the proper.
So Councilwoman Pastor, some people are already scheduled for that day. Many people, most people, are people who say that they want to help us during that weekend because they know it's a busy weekend. The people who are normally, that's their normal working shift, if they choose to take that day off, they would just have to use appropriate leave, that's all.
Okay.
Councilmember Garcia.
All right. From what I'm hearing, I'm going to make a substitute motion to have this on record because we cannot enforce or ensure social distance in parks, at golf or trails as a city, or make sure that all our staff are safe. Substitute motion to go with option 3, close golf courses and close all trails.
Second.
So we have a substitute motion from Councilmember Garcia and a second from the Vice Mayor.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Councilmember Diosisio. And then I think Councilwoman.
And I respect why they're doing it. Oh, I'm sorry. I do respect why you're doing it. I really do. I mean, you think that the rules should be uniform across the board. I get it. You know, we're not going to agree, but I do respect that on both your points. So the question I've got then, is this only for Easter or is this across the board on all times too?
It would be option 3 for Easter, because that's the thing we're talking about, Easter, and it would be closing golf courses and trails until the crisis, the local emergency is over.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, can I call for the question?
Yes, Councilwoman Williams next.
Can I call for the question, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. We have people queued in public comment, so could we go to public comment?
Mayor, this is the city manager also. If I could just clarify from the substitute motion that would include the pieces which were to close the ramadas immediately and also to continue with the restrictions that the Parks Director had temporarily put in place. Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Guardado? It would include those?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
And could the city attorney remind me, if someone calls for the question and we have public comment, do we need to remind me what happens?
Mayor, the call for the question ends the council debate. If you still have public comment you need to take, you would need to do that.
Okay, then we will move to public comment. We have folks queued on the phone. For members of the public, please know we are new to this system, so we apologize for any bumps. We will begin with, let's see, sorry, a little bit, not quite ready. Do we have Brian Krause?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we will have Brian Krause, and he'll be followed by Jeff Caldwell.
Yeah, I want to thank the council and the mayor for addressing the issue. And I am a ranger, so this is based on our experience in the ranger force over the last couple of weeks. So the decision to close trails, I'm absolutely in favor of, and that's based on our experience. And one thing I want to highlight is, the general idea of people out on trails dispersed is not a problem, but where the issue comes from is how our parks and preserves are built and basically how they're accessed. A bunch of families out on the trail is fine, and it adheres to social distance guidelines, but what we have is massive points of concentration. So we've talked about picnic areas, talked about bathrooms. South Mountain has lookout points, and the number of surfaces that people come in contact with, it increases exponentially based on our visitation. So one of the ironies of the city's closures of businesses and schools is that it has been put in place to prevent a lot of travel, and it has siphoned that travel to the parks and preserves. So you guys can wrap your minds around the numbers. South Mountain Park in March of 2019, which is our busy season, saw 11,000 cars come through the central gate, most of the traffic heading towards the summit. This March, that number was 38,000, so an almost four-fold increase at a time when this pandemic was starting to get out and other municipal areas were starting to lock down. Director Inger mentioned that we have put in restriction methods. We've implemented a half-capacity closures at areas of high concentration. So that has worked as far as mitigating the number of people and attempting to disperse people, but it in itself creates a number of other issues. You get increasing parking related or other enforcement issues based on people that are not able to engage in the activity of their choice. There is a large quotient of the public that is not adhering to social distancing guidelines. They are not taking the message seriously. And a lot of them are ending up in the park system. The other point, eventually we have, with the increased exposure to the public, we have the reality that members of the public may become ill themselves. And with the city's mandatory quarantine policy for sick employees, the ranger and any other close to might.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for your testimony. Sorry, there is a timer going off. It's not as good as a light, but we are trying to figure out how to do with timing. We will next go to Jeff Caldwell, followed by Amanda Davis.
Hi, my name is Jeff Caldwell, and I just recently moved to Phoenix, and I've experienced firsthand how the trail system works. And I support social distancing and stand strongly in opposition to restricting the trails. And I urge the council to vote no, because first of all, it's important for people to stay home. However, we have to be active in order to boost our immune system and to be healthy to fight the virus. So that way we don't put a strain on the social safety net. But I used to weigh 315 pounds in mid-December, and I've lost 40 pounds since mid-December. My doctor recommended that I use the trails as a way to exercise, and it's very important for me to lose weight because of the threat of high blood pressure. The trails are a major source of exercise for my daily routine, and the trails are actually a necessity in my life. Recently, a couple days ago, I actually went running up a mountain, and there was a couple that passed me because they were faster than I was. And we were able to practice social distancing because we were about 12 feet apart, and there was hardly anybody on the trail. I've visited multiple trails over the past few weeks, and as the country has become more adamant about social distancing, fewer people have gone to the trails. I have not seen overcrowding and have been social distancing. The photo that was circulated a couple weeks ago from a local Arizona newspaper discussing the social distancing issue on the trails was a stock photo taken weeks ago before the article was written and did not accurately represent current day traffic. But in conclusion, the trails are my main source of exercise, and I highly encourage the council to vote no.
Thank you, Jeff. Amanda Davis will be followed by Carl Mueller. Amanda, go ahead.
Yes, I ask that the council votes no on closing the trails, being that, as previously mentioned, it's fundamentally important for the human state As it pertains to the Phoenix Desert, it's specifically important for us Phoenicians to be able to get outside and be a part of that environment. It's very comforting. It's a place of solace, especially in these uncertain and heightened kind of emotional times. It's not only part of physical well-being, but also emotional well-being. For example, since the outbreak, personally, I have suffered an emotional deficiency, and being able to be outside, I'm sorry, I'm going to get emotional about it, is really important for my emotional support. I understand the concern and need for limit of overcrowding at these sites, but I really implore you to consider other ways of managing the volume of individuals, maybe considering peak hours, but cutting them off completely would be detrimental to many of the citizens. Phoenicians I find to be very sensible individuals. We understand the need for protocol and to practice the CDC guidelines to limit the transmission, but being outside and not being in an indoor environment, I don't think is the same. So being outside is, you know, like as previously mentioned, exercise, sunshine are important to our immune system, but it's in the best interest of the citizens of Phoenix to keep these locations open so that we have an outlet to be a part of emotionally and physically. Please consider that emotional impact that closing the trails will have on the citizens. It's a difficult and uncertain time. There's anxiety amongst many citizens, and this is something that will kind of provide a comfort and solace for many of us. So please do not close the trails. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Carl Mueller will be followed by Bridget Bunch. Carl, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you,
yeah.
Carl.
Hey, great. Well, so I'm a father with 2 young kids, and I just want to speak on behalf of families who are now homeschooling while simultaneously working full-time. So I support social distancing. I also support keeping the trail open responsibly. I just want to make sure that you're hearing that closing these trails is a big deal and should not be taken lightly. And I don't think we should give into hysteria and anecdotes, all right? People, you might not use these trails, but many, many people do. I just want to start out by pointing out that the city parks in New York City, the global epicenter of the coronavirus, are still open right now. I don't know if you've been to New York City. It's a very densely populated place. Phoenix is not, and we have hundreds of miles of trails in this city. I'm out there every day, and I'm just not seeing these huge crowds who are irresponsibly using these things. I'm seeing people maintain their sanity, and I'm seeing people staying healthy. People need these trails, and kids need to get outside. Wealthier people might have yards to send their kids in, but low-income families are packed into crowded apartments. They do not, and those kids are going to be playing in more dangerous locations like the street. People are going to walk somewhere. They're going to be walking the streets. And obviously, the other thing is we're all under incredible strain right now. We're boxed up in our houses. We're getting pummeled into depression by the news. And giving people a way to get outdoors responsibly in a beautiful place, to see some sunshine, and see that they're part of something bigger, and to see other people from a safe distance is critical in cultivating a resilient population. It's going to help keep families together. It's going to lower domestic violence rates so people have an outlet that they can safely use. It might even prevent suicides. I know that sounds melodramatic, but unfortunately, it's probably true. And thank you for hearing me.
Thank you so much. Bridget will be followed by Dana. Bridget, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am in favor of the trails staying open during this time. I just kind of want to repeat what others have said, that I know like hiking or biking or running on the trails gives stress relief to people experiencing great instability during this time. I know when I have a bad day emotionally or a taxing day mentally, hiking on any of the Phoenix trails helps me stay grounded. Being in the outdoors gives me, as well as others, peace, comfort, and community. I know I've been on the trails the last couple of weeks, and yes, they have been really crowded on the weekends. But, you know, the people have been so respectful on the trails, and I've noticed a very positive energy. The sunshine, nature, and a good workout are exactly what we need to keep our hope. So please keep the trails open. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and taking it into consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Dana will be followed by Marissa. I'm sorry, Dana, we have, Dana is not on the line. Marissa Hamilton, who will be followed by June Martin. Marissa, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. My name is Marissa Hamilton. I am identified as an immunocompromised person by my doctor. She requires me to have high intensity exercise specifically for my heart and my lungs, 45 minutes a day. And since our exercise facilities have been shut down, our trails, specifically those with steep peaks, are my only source to keep my immune system strong. Closing down these trails or restricting these trails means you're closing down my ability to fight the coronavirus, literally. I have been on the trails daily. I have not seen congestion. As other people commented, hikers have been responsible in social distancing practices. I did speak to a Camelback mountain ranger a couple weekends ago, and he said he hasn't had any issues with hikers not social distancing. Dr. Fauci has said that people should be outside exercising often. He has not recommended to close down trails. That has been also confirmed by Dr. Birx, which he did say was a huge risk with public transportation, which has not been sanitized by Valley Metro on a daily basis. And yesterday we did have a driver that got tested positive for coronavirus. That's not being exposed to the public as to who are the riders that are at risk there. So I feel like we have not had a consistent standard in our caution in Phoenix, and we're taking away things that are have an enormous impact on being able to reduce things like suicides. We had a commander last week that was killed in a domestic violence call. These are actual crises that are going to continue to increase. And in my opinion, these are the priorities that Phoenix should be looking at. Instead, you're creating a problem on our trails that people have been self-adjusting to. And so my ask to the city council is to focus on things that actually kill people instead of the efforts that will result in my immune system not being able to function properly, and that will subject me to being at risk to coronavirus, and it's the same for many other people out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. June will be followed by our final speaker, David.
Hi, this is June. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the council. I would like to encourage you to vote no to closing the trails. I'm a resident of the Quintessa location, which is near the Mormon Trailhead over on South Mountain. And as someone who utilizes the trail system on a daily basis, and sometimes even multiple times a day, I implore you not to take this source of joy away from me, my family, and my fellow Phoenix neighbors. The trails are my happy place where I'm able to run, hike, and cycle for physical and mental well-being. It's a known fact that living a healthy lifestyle that includes physical activity has many health benefits that are not just physical, but also mental. Here are just a few statistics that I found. The benefits of hiking for mental health. Hiking in nature for just 20 minutes can drop up to 13.4% cortisol, which is the body's primary stress hormone. A 90-minute hike through a natural environment helps to lower levels of rumination. Rumination is one of the risk factors for mental illness. It also minimizes the risk for heart attacks. Hiking can lower your blood pressure by 4 to 10 points, and it reduces the risk of fatal health diseases. And as per the studies, 1 3-hour hike per week ensures a healthier heart and less chances for having a stroke. During this ongoing public health crisis, all of our lives have been disrupted to some degree, and we are all feeling stress from these unexpected challenges we're facing. The trails are a priceless benefit to many of our Phoenix citizens. In the past 3 weeks of the 6 feet order, I myself have continued to access the trails for my own source of exercise, sanity, and peace of mind. Here's what I've noticed. Despite the increase in the number of hikers on the trails, participants have been respectful of each other. We've been abiding by the 6-foot rule, letting others pass with a wide berth, and all while seemingly happy during this very stressful time. As a final thought, I'd like to say, in the coming weeks, as temperatures continue to rise, Mother Nature is going to fix this problem for you because people won't be hiking in 100 degrees. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have David on the line right now?
No. Mayor, we do not.
Okay, we do not have David with us. So then that completes all of our speakers for the public comment portion of this particular item. So we will first move to a vote on Councilmember Garcia's motion, and we will have
Mayor.
And we have called the question, so I believe we need to first go to voting. So.
Yes, I guess I had a question. I just wanted to know if there's a way to ask legal. Is this in direct contradiction of the governor's executive order, this motion?
Yeah, of course it is.
Chris, would you prefer not to? We normally don't do legal advice in public, but I think there was a slide in the PowerPoint question that answered this anyway.
Yeah, I just want clarity, so.
Yeah, Mayor, as you said, we typically don't give legal advice in meetings, but the governor's order does list parks, hiking, trails, et cetera, as essential government functions and that they should remain open. We are allowed to put restrictions on them to enforce the distancing requirements, but the governor's office has indicated their intent that the that the facilities remain open.
But Chris, is it also true that if we are unable to keep people safe and enforce the social distancing, then we can do this?
Mayor, Councilman Garcia, the orders are not that specific. It encourages people to maintain that distance, but it's not clear that if we can't enforce that we would have to close them down.
Okay. Councilwoman Williams has called the question, so we are going to now move to roll call on Councilmember Garcia's motion. If that were to pass, that would be the final vote on parks. If it were to fail, we will go to the motion by Councilwoman Williams. City Manager, are we ready for roll call?
Ms. Macaron will call the roll on the substitute motion.
Yes, and Mayor, prior to that, our city attorney says that we need to actually vote on the call of the question, please. Councilman DeCiccio? This is to be
no.
perfectly clear, this is the call of the question that we're voting on.
No, I know. I always think that I think we have a lot more to discuss, but so I'm going to vote no.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pastor?
No.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Waring?
No.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
Yes.
Mayor Gallego?
Yes.
The question has been called, so now we will take roll call on the substitute motion. Councilman DeCiccio?
It's critical we leave the trails open, and I'm going to be voting no.
Councilmember Garcia?
In order to save people's lives, I think it is important that we do as much as we can to keep people home. And we are enabled as a city to ensure that people can socially distance and that our employees can continue to be safe. With already having so many employees at risk, I am voting yes on this motion to close down the trails, the golf courses, and the parks for Easter.
Councilman Nowakowski?
No.
Councilwoman Pastor?
I'm going to explain my vote because I have spoken to several doctors regarding the trails and regarding the parks. And if we want to flatten the curve, save lives, we have to do what the right thing is to do. And I am voting yes.
Councilwoman Stark?
No.
Councilman Waring?
No.
Councilwoman Williams?
No.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
So I want to explain my vote. I'm going to be, I think I've been very consistent, and I think we're all trying to be very consistent, that we want to make sure that people stay home. I think I have huge concerns for our employees. I have huge concerns of people being able to stay 6 feet apart and not getting contained with this virus. I have a lot of issues with this. I just wish that we would get in a line to say that we want people to stay home, and if we do that, this is not going to last forever. I think it's a huge problem that we're not able to do that, but I'm still going to be voting yes on this. So yes.
Mayor Gallego.
Thank you. I have been relying on advice from groups such as Johns Hopkins public health professionals who have urged that to the extent possible, you should leave trails and parks open. It's obviously important that you only do so if people can practice social distancing and as long as we can protect our staff. But I believe that Councilwoman Williams' motion strikes that balance, so I'm planning to vote yes on that. I vote no on this motion.
Thank you. So the motion fails 6-3.
We next move to a vote on Councilwoman Williams' motion. Roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Mayor, just to explain my vote, I was going back and forth on this because it really doesn't do much, but I think it would set a bad precedent to even close them down on Easter, so I'm going to be voting no. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia?
Explain my vote. I feel that it's irresponsible that we are not shutting everything down. I would want us to still consider golf courses after this vote. But because I think we should do something rather than nothing, I wish we were doing a lot more instead of doing this, which is very similar to what the governor's doing. But I still vote yes.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Waring?
No.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
I'm going to explain my vote. So I'm going to be voting yes on this, but again, I just wish that we were doing a lot more about this. I cannot tell you the phone calls, the text messages that I've gotten from different people in fear of Easter. I just wish that we were just doing a lot more about this, and again, I just wish that we were consistent with the right message, that we were just shutting things down. We're sending mixed messages, and I don't think that's right. But again, I'm not happy about what we're doing, but I guess something is better than nothing, which is the attitude that we've been taking. So I'm going to vote yes.
And Mayor Gallego?
Yes. So the motion passes 7-2.
7-2. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation on parks, and we next move to update on Planning and Development Department public meetings. We welcome Alan Stevenson, our Planning and Development Director, as our presenter.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This particular item is a request, I believe that Councilwoman Stark had, to get an update on how the Planning and Development Department is working on our process for our public meetings. In this case, the department does have approximately 50 meetings or public hearings a month. We have 30 different boards and commissions that go through the department, and this is just a sampling of a few of those. You see a number of them are quasi-judicial. Those are the zoning adjustments, board of adjustments. Those ones don't typically go to the mayor and council. That's your variances and use permits and some of those types of items.
We have a number of them that are policy legislative ones where they're helping, provide advice to you guys on the decision-making process, like our village planning committees, Historic Preservation Commission or the Planning Commission. And then we have technical ones like the Development Advisory Board and technical appeals and site plan review teams. So we do have a number of public meetings that we administer as part of the development process. So what we've done so far here is due to the COVID outbreak, we did cancel some of our meetings in the later part of March. We did also implement some social distancing and 10-person limits in some of the existing zoning adjustment hearings that we had already had scheduled. Those are the hearings that take place in the assembly rooms. They're typically every Thursday. Because there's one hearing officer making those decisions on variances and use permits, typically it's easy to take a group of people in, whether it's an applicant and their architect and or neighbors if they have concerns on it, and take them into the hearing room and have them outside in one of the other assembly rooms, waiting for their particular item to come up. Then they go in, both sides are allowed to present, make their case, and then the hearing officer can render a decision. We've worked with customers to modify their hearing schedules to move things around because of the cancellation of some of the village meetings that have happened. And we did start working to explore future hearing options, started having discussions with some of my colleagues in larger cities throughout the country, as well as some of the local ones to see what they are looking at and doing as part of this effort as well. So what do we have going forward next? We are implementing a local emergency citizen review process. And so this is something that, pursuant to state statute, we're required to have a citizen review process for our zoning requirements. A lot of our other public hearings have similar items, although not as comprehensive as the rezoning one, but there's some similarities. And so what we are proposing is that during the local emergency time period, that all of our notices would stay the same regarding, signage, our 4-foot by 8-foot signs, the letters, all the advertising standards would be the same. What we are proposing is that we'd have a project website that would allow for online public comments, to have virtual neighborhood meetings to comply with the meeting requirement for rezoning applications. And so an applicant would set that up, and then as part of their notice process and their signage, that language would be updated so that people could go there, comment on the project, and then those comments would be done kind of in a virtual neighborhood meeting instead of the ones that happen in person. An applicant would still be required to submit their citizen participation report where they list, here's all the public comments that we garnered from that, and provide that as part of the hearing process. We also are implementing the virtual public meeting and hearing policy. And so pursuant to how you guys are working through your meetings with the WebEx platform, we will be launching that on April 13th with all of our PDD public meetings going forward there to be done via that WebEx platform. We're working on all the guidance and instructions that will go out later this week, obviously, and updating the staff information regarding notice requirements and standard templates so that the signs and letters would have references to, it'll be a virtual meeting, here's the dates, and information on how to get into it, as well as the neighborhood meeting that we just talked about as well online and how to get to that. One of the things we are targeting is trying to get questions from either applicants or village planning committee members or other folks early on so that we can have a more seamless meeting and try and tee those up so that we will be able to work with the public and our board members to have a little bit more seamless meeting if we know some of those questions beforehand, so we can try and integrate them as appropriate into the overall presentation and discussion. Other than that, the process, will work very similar to how they do today. As part of our OML posting for all of these different types of public meetings, we'll include information about how you could, participate in that meeting online via the WebEx platform. We would also, as part of the public meeting process, be able to have people call in if they couldn't take advantage of the internet and doing it that way. They'd be able to call in and make comments as well. We also would continue to offer the opportunity for someone to submit written comments, and then staff could read those into the record, similar to how you guys have been doing that. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor?
Thank you, Alan. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. I wanted this on the agenda because I'm pretty sure everyone got emails and letters from some of our neighborhoods, very concerned about the process. And I know we often have controversial cases that really do require a lot of citizen involvement, input from the neighborhood, but we also still have a lot of cases where there's a lot of support. So today, for example, I had that wasn't my case, but the Hatcher Road Alliance wanted to support a gentleman who wants to put up some improvements on his property, and in doing so, he had to get a variance on a setback. They actually wanted that, and they wanted him to proceed, and he even told me he would make sure the contractors did, in fact, practice social distancing. So it's kind of a tough situation because I think we need to make sure our neighborhoods feel part of it. But when we have positive projects, there's got to be a way that we move those forward and really help them and move our economy along. So it's a very, we're just in a tough time, and I wanted to say thank you, Alan, for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark, and thank you for putting this important agenda item on today's policy session. Good suggestion. We have 4 members of the public here to provide comments. Do we have council member comments before we go to the public? Okay, we will begin public comment. We'll begin with Opal Wagner, who will be followed by Mary Crozier. Opal, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Mayor and members of the council. I wanted to speak on this item today. I'm with the Willow Neighborhood Association. We're a very active neighborhood, close to downtown. So we have a lot of zoning hearings come up, and we're historic. So we also have a lot of historic preservation hearings come up. During this time when every time you leave your house and we're supposed to be staying at home, you're really risking getting infected and bringing this deadly infection home to your family members. So I think the city has been great as far as supporting the emergency measures and the governor's guidelines. But I think it's sending a huge mixed message to require members of the public to choose between their health, risking their health, or getting to participate in the public process. And I would like to see what most of our other major cities have done, which is to just continue hearings for 30 days while this stay-at-home order is in effect, because the city can't guarantee the public safety. The city staff is not experts in infection control, nor should they have to be. At these public meetings, people are seated 6 feet apart, but when they get up to walk to the podium, they're walking very close to other public members. They're all using the same podium. The podium's not wiped down between speakers. And if the meetings move online, you can't guarantee public access. Everyone doesn't have access to a computer. So I think that's a bad assumption. It would also prevent people from participating. So I'd suggest continuing everything until the stay-at-home order is lifted. So thanks for hearing my concerns, and thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you, Opal. We'll have Mary followed by Neil Haddad.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego and honorable city council members. I'm Mary Crozier. I'm president of the North Central Phoenix Homeowners Association. Our board sends wishes for your good health to you and your families and all members of city staff. I am on this call today to respectfully request that you postpone all non-essential zoning hearings unless they are critical in the battle against the COVID-19 virus and will help flatten the curve. You know, daily we're hearing from our president and our governor the importance of public safety by complying with the spirit of their executive orders. Being the 5th largest city in the U.S., we should be leading in ways to reduce the risk of being exposed to this virus. There are several states and municipalities that are already seeing success by restricting public meetings. Many people who attend these meetings are neighborhood leaders, a lot of seniors, and though the thought of having a non-essential zoning hearing, perhaps to reduce somebody's side yard setback while reducing the health of others, is irresponsible and reckless. And it's not just attending the meeting, it's getting there, driving there, or taking public transportation. You're parking in a garage, you're pushing elevator buttons, you're touching door handles and public services, all creating potential exposure or contamination for our citizens and our employees. I also worry about the potential risk that the city has, both financially and legally, If somebody does come to a public hearing and they get sick, you cannot create or guarantee a sterile environment during these hearings. And in light of all the information that we know about the contagious effect of COVID-19, we expect you to act responsibly and postpone the non-essential hearings until a time that it's deemed safe. I just recently read a report from the University of Washington that suggests the peak of the virus in Arizona will be around April 26th. So if we need to postpone non-essential hearings until after April 26th or May 1st, it's really now time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Neil will be followed by Harvey Schulman.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and I appreciate all the work that the staff and you are doing, specifically for stuff we heard earlier on the budget and on parks. There has been no partnership and no dialogue on what Mr. Stevenson laid out to you today. We sent in a letter a week ago. 20 people signed it from different neighborhoods across the city. And since then, there's been no response. We got a brief response from Mr. Stevenson saying that they were going to continue with the plans for the planning and development quasi-judicial hearings. But other than that, nothing. And today we see this entire slate of ideas being presented. We also think it's unfair to be able to prepare for hearings. We come to these hearings, all of the neighbors that I work with and the neighborhood associations that I work with prepare for the hearings and take the time to seriously address all of the issues and concerns that we have. One of the things that we discussed was the option between contested and uncontested hearings. So in response to Councilwoman Stark's issue, we provided an option for that. Also, the other thing about having the WebEx platform, there are vast swaths of our community, of our city, that have no internet or that previously used the libraries to access the internet. The libraries are closed. They don't have those choices anymore. Even beyond that, by asking people to get on and knowing that people don't have internet access, you are discouraging public attendance at these public hearings. You can't have a public hearing without public attendance.
Thank you. Final testimony will be from Harvey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Although PDD staff is doing its best, these public hearings must be postponed and can't be held remotely. I went to last week's public hearing, and you would be appalled at what happened. The guy sitting in front of me sneezed in his hands and in his chair. He then went to the podium. The next person replaced him from the public, sat in his chair, went to the podium. There were no masks used. I could go on and on. There were more than 11 people in the room. There were 14 people almost all the time. It just isn't working. A city staff person told me that not only were they not offered masks and gloves, some of them are asking nurse practitioners and other healthcare providers they know in hospitals to please bring them masks and gloves so they can interact with the public. Why won't remote hearings work? These are hearings, not meetings. You've seen in this meeting yourself, which is just a meeting, Council Member DeCiccio said, we can barely or not well understand what everyone is saying. How do you expect to hold a public hearing like that, where there's multiple witnesses, documents, videos, photographs? The hearing officer has to listen to testimony. The hearing officer allows rebuttals. It is not feasible to do this remotely. We did suggest contested hearings be postponed, allow non-controversial things to go forward, like Ms. Garcia's wheelchair ramp, or Mr. Smith's, 1-foot step setback to get into his or her house. But to hold these hearings remotely is not responsible. and you cannot make a legitimate decision after what's supposed to be a public hearing. So please go ahead and postpone these, particularly the contested matters, for at least 30 days. The city courts are closed. You cannot have a civil trial in the municipal court for weeks. Why are we letting decisions be made without evidence and signs? Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony. I will next turn to our planning director, Alan Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As part of this process, staff did look at and evaluate what other cities are doing to see where we fit in both the region as well as the biggest other cities in the country. And yesterday I participated in a conference call with probably about 30 cities that are the largest in the U.S. And without a doubt, the discussion is all of them are going to online meetings. Some of them have already done it, like San Jose, Seattle. Others are in the process of doing it, and so we are right in line with that, given what we're hearing from the CDC about the duration of the epidemic. Shutting everything down does not seem like anything that is what the largest cities in the country are doing relative to how they are operating with their public process. In addition to that, locally here, the city of Mesa, Goodyear are moving forward with public hearings and online format as well. So we are making sure that we are in line with all of that. I think regarding Mary Crozier's comments, we are proposing that all meetings would go to a virtual meeting, so we would no longer have the ZA hearing process where we are taking public testimony and doing it in small groups. We would convert that to online as well, so no one would have to drive down here and go through that. They could provide testimony from their office, if they're still working or at home, wherever they're at, and be able to do that. The board members would be sitting just as you guys are in a complete virtual meeting. We would not have, a physical location. And we also are offering a phone line so that if people don't have access to technology, most people do have access to a phone, they'll be able to have a call-in line just like you guys offer for your meetings, so that people can use that technology if that's what they want to do to comment. And then we also will take your written comments and read those into the record as well.
Thank you, Alan. Council member comments or questions?
Mayor?
This is Councilwoman
Are we
Pastor.
voting on this? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll do Councilwoman Pastor.
Alan, can you, why can't we postpone for 30 days? I have several zoning cases that are contentious that my constituency wants to be able to do all the research, everything that they need to do, meet with staff, do everything that is part of bundling, getting ready for a hearing. And so I would like to know why we can't postpone for 3 days.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, that is something that if the council wished to say we should postpone those hearings, that's something that the council could, provide direction today, and that's what staff could do. We're not bringing that forward because we understand from the CDC that this is going to be a more long-term effort, and even if it is a shorten the cap right now, that there's chances that things are going to come back, and so people are looking at this as a new way of getting the public involved to be able to make it easier for them to comment from their living room and participate in the government process in that way, as opposed to having to come down to a night meeting and or, a day meeting that only really appeals to certain segments of the population that can make that happen, where you'd be able to have greater participation, within that process. And in doing it in electronic fashion, you are, being safe from the standpoint of not promoting the impacts of spreading the virus. And I would say that from a economic standpoint, you heard from Mr. Barton earlier, the budget situation, and one of the things that my department does is brings in construction sales tax, it brings in construction jobs, other jobs that are happening, and those are things that are needed in the community to help us as we continue to work through these issues.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Pastor.
So I understand all that, but I think if we really are paying attention on the ways and we look at the science and the data of how we need to move forward in order to flatten the curve, it's very difficult at this moment because constituents aren't educated on all these nuances of how the new government's going to happen. So I would like to see, if it's not 30 days, I like to see a postponement so that communities and constituencies can understand all the different options. It's unfair to just then say, we're going to do it like this and not educate people on how to maneuver through this process.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, to your question directly, it is within the council's authority to direct something different than what Alan has laid out. So the council could direct staff to postpone for a specific period of time that you desired, through April or for 30 days from today, which would be May 3rd. Any of those, Councilman Pastor, is available to the council today.
Mayor and Councilwoman Pastor, I would add that what staff has done in terms of giving some additional time to roll this out and make sure that the public understands how to participate is, actually tonight would have been a planning commission meeting that had a couple of very controversial cases, and we are continuing all of those items to May so that we can work on rolling this technology and how we use it out to the community at some of the village planning committee meetings where there are items that aren't as contentious, and then all the ones that would have been heard tonight are going to the May Planning Commission meeting to push things back to make sure that the public can understand more and not have to show up, on cases that are, very controversial tonight. So we are doing some of just what you said in terms of giving the public time, and that's why we're not rushing to have the village meetings that would have been taking place this week. We're doing it, starting next week to start having some of those so that we can let all the folks know whether they're the village members or anyone in the public that's participating. So we're open to, whatever the council would like to provide direction for on that.
Mayor.
Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Stark, followed by Councilman DeCiccio.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I appreciate what you're saying, Laura. I worry about those cases where there is a lot of support, where again, I'm using the Hatch Road situation. The businesses really rallied behind this applicant. They really wanted him to be able to move forward because they're trying to do a lot of positive things along Hatcher Road. So I don't know how we can, I guess I'm frustrated because I want to help the people that people support, but I understand the opposition. So I guess I'm a little lost here in this discussion. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilman DeCiccio, and then Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not going to be lost on this one. Look, we already have an economy that's in shambles. To stop this economy, to stop growth occurring in our city is going to put us further behind the curve. I mean, like we're way behind the curve. So you have two levels of issues here. One, you have, and this is probably one of the biggest issues we're dealing with today because, the trails are important. It's great for our mental well-being, but this is also for the future of our city. So you've got the ones that are non-controversial, and there's absolutely no reason those should not stay on time at all. There's absolutely none. We got a couple in my district, and I know we've got some citywide. You're going to have some that are controversial, but as a city, you cannot just put the brakes on our city. Just can't do it. We're going to end up trashing our economy worse than it already is. It's going to take us months to recover, and to stop any future growth in our economy, I think it's a big mistake. I get it that people don't like the system, but at the end of the day, they still have the ability to have input at all three levels, and in some cases 2 levels, depending if they go into the ZA. So I think any movement now, any direction given to staff to slow things down when things are already extremely slow, I think is going to put us further behind. So I wouldn't be supportive of that. I like the direction Alan's going in. I think he's doing a great job there. He's trying to balance everything. And I know he's got a lot of pressure on him, but for my end of it, I think that would be a horrible mistake as a city.
Thank you, Councilmember DeCiccio. I believe Councilwoman Pastor was the next to, did Councilwoman Pastor
Yes.
want to speak again? And then we'll go to Councilmember Garcia.
Alan, have you, like CED has done any videos or tutorials to be able to educate the community? And if you have, how has that been sent out to everyone? Because I can think of a constituent that falls in the vulnerability area of the coronavirus 19 that is very active, such as Gigi George, who follows all the things around the community. I'm not saying that she may not know, but how are you communicating with them?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, as Mr. Haddad had stated, he did send correspondence that many of you saw last, it was about a week and a half or so ago. I did respond to that and said we were going forward with one hearing and looking at virtual options and others coming forward. Our plan that I went through and talked about is one that I have not circulated that idea through neighborhood groups or through the development community folks as well. It is in line with what our peer cities in the 10 largest across the country as well as local cities are doing. And I wanted to come today to have some discussion with you guys and then get input from you. We can certainly do videos, to make sure that the public is informed. Many of you have seen the videos that my department puts out, and we make great videos through our public information officer, and we can certainly do that for all of these items.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor. Councilmember Garcia.
We've even had some trouble in the last 2 days figuring this out. And so I would suggest to find the middle ground here, maybe hold things off for a couple of weeks and try to have some practice runs next week and make sure all different levels of folks get to practice with the technology. And then we are able to provide either phone or WebEx access to the community. Again, I think the tutorials is a great idea, just being able to use the technology before we move forward with decision making. So I think I would agree with Sal, for sometimes we do, Sal, that I do think holding things back can hurt us even more. But I do think that even we had some trouble and we had technicians running around helping us. I think the technology is going to take a while for people to get used to it. So we can have a couple of weeks to focus and make sure that we do it right. Our system is unique, and so I know we're looking at other cities, but their processes are different. And so I would want our system to go kind of through a dry run before we're making decisions and we're missing people's input.
Thank you, Councilmember. Alan, you had mentioned that nationally this was consistent with what large cities are doing. How does it compare with what other cities in the Valley are doing?
Mayor, members of council, the other large cities are starting to move towards online meetings as well. Mesa and Goodyear are both going in that fashion. I believe Maricopa County is also discussing it for their planning commission as well. And so the trend from a planning perspective, because those types of functions are housed in a planning and development department throughout the country for the most part, is looking at having to go virtual online for these things. The largest cities are not shutting down, and neither are the larger cities here around Metro Phoenix. They're still doing their business by appointment, and are still going to go back to having their public hearings.
Wonderful, thank you, Alan. Councilwoman Pastor.
Alan, we have a very archaic system. The City of Phoenix has a very archaic system in the sense of it's taken us 3 weeks to actually do what we're doing today, and we're still having technical difficulties. As you saw today, the mayor couldn't be heard, there's static, echoing. And so I think it's very important because now we're going outside of our little circle in the sense of broadening out into the public. And I don't know if I need to make a motion or if I would like to postpone this for 2 weeks until we get some tutorials, videos, and making sure that our technology is up to where it needs to be for the public. Do I need to make a motion?
How about, Councilwoman, we do a motion to move forward with Alan's plan, noting that council members can continue controversial items, and then requesting that staff create tutorials for the public.
I actually want to, for 2 weeks, I guess I'll make a motion. I move to postpone all controversial cases to allow time for staff to educate the public on the new process for a period till April 20th. I don't think Councilman Garcia is online, or he can't hear what I'm getting. So I was making that motion.
But can I just
Mayor, may I ask a question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think I heard Councilwoman Stark first, and then we'll go to Councilman DeCiccio.
So you're saying if they're simple cases, there's support for the cases, they can move forward, correct, Laura? I mean, Councilwoman Pastor.
Yes.
Okay.
And I couldn't hear the mayor, which he had asked, so I was like, I'll just do the motion.
I think that's kind of the same thing that the mayor was saying.
Mayor, so I'll go ahead and second Councilwoman Pastor's motion.
Mayor, members of council, if I could clarify, we will be able to have videos up and operational next week before we would have any public meetings. And certainly if we wanted to, I believe Councilman Garcia talked about pushing the meetings back to a week. So instead of starting April 13th, starting the following week, which I think is in line with what Councilwoman Pastor is wanting to do. We will commit to having the videos up, next week to explain how all that would work so that we could disseminate that, in advance of the public meetings that would start that following week. So that way people could understand, ask questions. We could probably even do some test runs with some of the neighborhood leaders if they're willing to donate some time to us to set it up so that we can practice with them, because that's what my staff and I will be doing to ensure that we can make sure that this works going forward.
Thank you for that solution, Alan. That's where I was leading to. That's what I wanted to do, was to give people time to practice, give you time to work out the glitches, and then start that following week, April 20th. Does that work?
Okay.
Mayor?
So Alan, would this how would this affect village planning commissions? Would this, when we were taking votes that are not final votes, could those still move forward, advisory bodies, or?
Well, Mayor, council members, what staff was proposing with our process would be to convert everything to online starting with that April 13th. I think what Councilwoman Pastor is wanting is give it another week before you go to that online stuff, work on videos, get it out to the neighbors, and so we would then start those hearings a week later. So there are some village meetings that would be coming up that would be impacted if we didn't have those village meetings. We would have an applicant work with us to try and figure out a hearing schedule that maybe we can save them time somewhere else in the process. So, for example, I talked about the Planning Commission meeting that is tonight, that we're continuing all those items to the May's Planning Commission meeting, but we are advertising that for a council action on May, which is your third Wednesday meeting in May, I think it's the 18th, will be then. So that way it's really costing them 2 weeks of time, but we're getting time to work on the process to get everything worked out ahead of time, so it's not impacting applicants too much, but it's making sure that we're in as good a shape as we can with our neighbors and other stakeholders who want to participate in terms of being able to practice. And so we do a similar approach with the village meetings that were supposed to take place next week of pushing them out so that we could accommodate the additional training and time and practice.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. So how do you define controversial? Is it one person in opposition, or 20 or 30, or how do you define that? Can anyone define that?
Mayor, members of council, I don't believe there's a consensus definition of what a controversial case is, and that's what makes it difficult with a process, and why staff was proposing to treat them all similarly and move to that online format.
Mayor, just from my end, I think any delay in this economy right now is going to prove to be a disaster long term. It's going to have repercussions. I won't be supportive of anything, but at least from my end of it, Alan, I'm just letting you know there's nothing controversial in my district. So from my end of it, I like to keep things proceeding at the same pace. I'd like to make sure that we're continually working forward. And, from that end of it, I want things to start coming to our plate. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Any council member comments or questions?
So, Mayor, members of council, if I could maybe try and clarify the motion to make sure we're all good here. I think that Councilwoman Pastor made the motion to move back the start date of our online process to April 20th. And as part of that, from those meetings on would be the virtual format. We would continue what we're doing today, which is they're all canceled in the meantime, with the exception of the ZA hearing that we're doing the social distancing. Those are the smaller ones. So that would take place next Thursday. In the meantime, we would be working on videos and doing some practice with some of our neighborhood leaders, if they're willing to do it as well, to practice on this and get the videos out and circulate them amongst the community. We can certainly put in information and require, as part of the templates we make developers send out with the letters, we can put in language that would say, go to this website to watch videos on how to comment online and how to do that. We can distribute that information and have the videos all done next week.
Alan.
Was that Laura? Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes, that's okay. Alan, you said something about next week. What is happening next week? Because I would like to have this rolled out in a consistent manner.
So I'm sorry, members of council, the plan is to roll that on April 13th. So not next week, it would be that week after. I misspoke on the weeks. And the ZA hearing next week on Thursday would go forward. That's the one where we've been doing the social distancing that's in the assembly rooms downstairs. And so that has, that meeting has been happening because those are the smaller ones that are the variances and use permits typically. So that's been moving forward.
Okay, can you possibly maybe test that next Thursday?
I'm sorry, would you want me to test that as an online one? Is that what you're asking, or cancel that one?
I'm asking maybe next Thursday you start testing it. I don't know if you'll be ready for rollout. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'll talk to you.
I think Councilwoman Pastor was asking if we could expedite the videos by a week and get this faster.
Yes.
Mayor, members of council, yes, we can expedite the videos to get them out quicker. We've been working with IT and city manager's office, and my folks have been over as they've been practicing and working through everything to get this worked out with you guys. We've been doing that, and so we'll continue to do that, and we'll work on the videos to get them out to the public as well.
Wonderful. Any additional council member comments?
Just a quick one there, and they'll be very fast. For my end too, Alan, and yeah, sorry, there's going to be a lot of this confusion going on, but sorry. So, Alan, one of the things that I think you really need to be aware of is that the financial markets right now are pulling back on a lot of projects. And if somebody has their financing in place, sometimes a delay of one day becomes a problem. So, I know you are aware of that, but so whatever it is you're working on, if there is financing, if there's they're going to have deadlines that are going to be critical because, Prudential just pulled out of the Phoenix market, which was huge, and they do institutional lending, which tells me that we're about to see some major problems here. So Allstate's still in, they're in full boat, but when you have a large entity like that pulling back, anything that we do, any message we send is going to pull them out of our market, out of the Phoenix market, and bring them to other places in the valley and other places around the country. So just be aware of that, and that's all I'm trying to let you know. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Stark.
Just one last question, and those are good comments, Sal. What about submitting evidence or documents? How will that occur? Often the neighborhood groups or the developer will have information they want to share. How will that be transmitted?
Mayor, members of council, that would be transmitted to either the hearing officers or the board, members in the same way that we do it today, which is principally electronic fashion. And so they have to submit those materials, a week, 10 days ahead of time for us to process and get out to those board members to then make the case. Through the online process, applicant would be afforded time to make their presentation, and they would be able to provide, their analysis of how they meet the legal tests of a variance or a use permit, if that's the kind of hearing that they're in. Neighbors would also, have that same opportunity via submitting written materials that are already part of the established process, and then be able to address that as part of their, speaking time when they're online.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any additional council member questions?
Hey, Mayor.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Alan, can you go back to next Thursday's meeting? Are you going to do that? Are you practicing social distancing with the technology? There's confusion, I guess.
Mayor, members of council, let me try and clarify that confusion. So the zoning adjustment hearings, which are the ones that take place in the assembly rooms over there for variances and use permits, those hearings have been going forward. Because there's only one hearing officer and one staff person, it's easier to maintain the 10 people in a room and bring them in one item at a time. So you can have an applicant and their team come in, and you could have a few neighbors in opposition. Typically, they're not that controversial. There are ones that are controversial at times, but typically they're not. What we've been doing and would propose to do this next Thursday is continue to do them in person. We would maintain the social distancing. We've been putting people whose item isn't up yet in the other assembly rooms and having them spaced out inside there so that they could then go in and have staff go out and call that item in, and then people come in and testify on that item like they normally would, and then they make a decision on it. And so that's what we would propose to do until we implement the online switch, which would take place after the 20th of April.
So I have some questions because I have constituents texting me regarding the zoning case next Thursday. There are people that show up on Thursday morning with paperwork to do an argument or in the hearing, and how is those items, that evidence, going to be provided to the neighborhood if they're walking in with that paperwork? I mean, these are details that mean something, have a lot of meaning in the case. And so, like, for me, I'll just use myself as a counsel. I got the PowerPoint this morning, and I read the PowerPoint this morning, but I had time to read it and ask questions. So how will that information then get to those neighborhoods that are watching the case or that are part of the case, if we're going on the web?
So, Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, if someone is providing information the day of the meeting, it would be something that we would have to talk to whatever that hearing body is about. Are they going to accept that information? I think under the current scenarios, most of the time the board does not take any substantive items the day of, because that's a quasi-judicial process, and if they end up in court, whatever they accept as evidence is part of that process, and so they won't take significant items. They may take a PowerPoint, in which case we would say, you've got to have that PowerPoint digitally so we could show it to everyone who'd be watching online. But they don't typically take big packets of material last minute that way.
I get it, but if it's new evidence that they're presenting that morning, how is that going to get to the neighbors? I mean, I think that's we don't have to, we can discuss it, but these are the details that are worrying the neighborhoods. And so we just need to make sure that there's fair access across the board.
Mayor, members of council, I would be happy to sit down and talk to Neil and Mary and some of the other neighborhood leaders, via WebEx. We won't have a meeting with people there, but we will have a virtual meeting with them to talk with them about any of those concerns and how we might address them.
Okay, because the process for Board of Adjustment and in zoning adjustment case is completely different.
Mayor, Councilman Pastor, that's correct.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, is that each hearing is different, or how it operates, and so we just need to make sure that we get all the items to the constituents or those that are part of the hearing and be able to have fair access to it. That's just my point.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, we'll make sure to talk to those neighborhood leaders about what we can do to ensure that there's fair access to information that is provided, so that everyone has it. most people are able to get that stuff digitally these days, and to the extent that they're not, we can work with them to find some other avenue to get that information, if they wish to get it.
I think this process will be full of innovation. We're learning a lot as we go, so certainly maybe there'll be new technology, and maybe we'll come up with new best practices. We might even hope to have better processes when we come out of COVID-19 and better understanding of how to be a more digital, smarter city. With that, are we ready to go to a vote?
Yes.
All right. I don't think we need roll call, but just in the abundance of caution, roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
No.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski? Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Waring?
No.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
Yes.
Mayor Gallego?
Yes. So item passes 7-2. Thank you to all who contributed to this process. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to becoming a smarter city.
Thank you.
That is our final agendized item. We have cards from the public on general items that will be entered into the record. We will have executive session, thanks to the Vice Mayor and Councilwoman Stark, on Monday, and come back again for policy. It looks likely that we may be able to hear from a former Surgeon General of the United States on Monday, which will be very helpful. Wish everyone and their families the ability to stay safe, and good luck. Thank you. We are adjourned.